Chapter 252, Fire Paper Method. Xiang released a breath in the side. 12 hours before the final deadline, and he had finally found the enemy. As long as he found the enemy, he had the time to sort them out. The feeling of living after near death filled his body. He couldn't help but want to exhale, but when he saw the hint of disappointment in the eyes of Second Elder, he forced himself to keep it in. A hint of darkness flashed across the deepest part of his eyes. He did not want to show his weakness in front of his opponent. I've said it before. As long as they are in Little Mountain Jia, how can we not find them? He pretended to be calm and said with a smile, "Tell us the situation." He looked as though he had expected all this. Chief Elder, our people had encountered the enemy on the plains in West River. A small platoon of 16 people, our people were completely defeated. West River Plains. Xiang mused, "Let Yuan take some people and make a trip. The other side has 4 people that have comprehended sword essence, and a Diana Shio that has an abhina. We cannot underestimate them." "Yes." The subordinate hurriedly complied. "Go quickly. Report anytime there is news." Xiang waved his hand. The subordinate was perceptive and left. No wonder this group dare to be so presumptuous. They do have some ability. Xiang smiled as he spoke to the other elders. A little troop just disappeared like this without a sound. Chief Elder is wise, an elder agreed. However, if they want to work against our Clear Sky sect, they obviously do not know their own limits, and are asking for their death. The other elders all nodded. As to the little troop that had all died, no one was concerned. What did it have to do with them? The outer hall did not lack for people. Below their feet were patches of clouds that spread into the horizon like a sea of clouds. Flying above the cloud layer, the sky was perfectly blue. Without any cover, the sunlight was abnormally poisonous. If one did not have their Ling armor activated, they would be unknowingly corroded with a thread of fire poison contained in the sunlight. There would rarely be Xianxia who would fly so high. The strong wind at high elevations and the fire poison in the sunlight would increase the consumption of Ling power in flight. A troop of about 300 people howled across the sea of clouds with astounding speed. "Boss, where are we going?" the subordinate asked Gongsun Cha. Gongsun Cha was sitting on a large green sword. There was an egg-shaped Ling shield around the big sword, blocking out the sharp wind and poisonous sunlight. Inside the Ling shield, it was as warm as the spring and unusually silent. This big sword that was about 1.5 zhang long had been forged of an entire block of 4th-grade wind Ling wood. Peerlessly light, it was an extremely fine flying sword. However, it was sumptuous to use such a big piece of wind Ling wood to make a flying sword. This was a spoil of victory. This flying sword was called Green Cloud, and had become Gongsun Cha's personal flying sword. Because this flying sword could hold 7 or 8 people at the same, the person sitting on the point of the flying sword was the Xianxia who was controlling Green Cloud. With Gongsun Cha's Juji cultivation, he basically could not move Green Cloud. "Don't you feel that we are too few in number?" When Gongsun Cha asked this, he seemed very much like a young and confused youth. Of course, the people sitting here had become immune long ago. "Not too few. We have 6 divisions now. But this city can hold 10,000 people." Gongsun Cha's voice seemed slightly childlike. Everyone sweated. It seemed Lil Mi's sense of humor was increasing. However, Gongsun Cha's words made everyone's hearts shake. The implication of Lil Mi's words were clear. They couldn't help but feel a thread of sympathy for the Xianxia in the surrounding area. "Then which place are we going to fight this time?" the subordinate asked carefully. "One by one." Everyone shook again. Gongsun Cha moved his mouth and another Xianxia took out a jade scroll, channeling Ling power inside. A light flashed and an illusory landscape of rivers and mountains appeared in front of them. "There are 13 different powers in our surroundings. The biggest has over 500 xianxia, the smallest has 80 xianxia. Oh, on average, each faction has about 200 people. 13 factions, how many would that be? Gong Sun Cha tilted his head as he asked. The subordinate swallowed, about 2,600 people. The faces of the people changed slightly. In total, they had slightly more than 300 people. If they were to attack more than 2,600 people, the difference in numbers was really too large. Just 2,000. A slightly disappointed expression came onto Gong Sun Cha's face. Everyone's heart jumped simultaneously as they hurriedly urged. It's more than enough, more than enough. Head, we should fight one at a time. Yes, yes. An empire isn't built in a day. They feared that Gong Sun Cha would be crazy and increase the number of targets. It was very likely that something like that could happen. Gong Sun Cha showed a disappointed expression. Alright, even though it is slightly less, but we shall first eat them. Head is wise. The subordinates said together. Gong Sun Cha smiled as though he enjoyed the respect of all the people. Head, we've taken so many people out, the safety of the camp is, we don't have to worry about that. It's enough to have 2 platoons standing guard. That woman is very strong, Gong Sun Cha said carelessly. Everyone finally recalled that boss had a female show of immeasurable power that followed him. Then they recalled the 3 golden armor guards that never showed their faces, and instantly stopped talking. Oh, we will return to the camp in a month. The faint tone made everyone's hearts shake as it entered their ears. All of the xianxia forcefully stood up from the body of the sword. Floating midair, they solemnly accepted the order. Yes. Batches of blue gold bricks were transported next to the foundation. They piled up into little mountains. Yuan Jiang glanced over and couldn't stop himself from swallowing. He urged weakly, Boss, we should call some more people over. Suemo ignored him and picked up 2 blue gold bricks. The thick bricks seemed to weigh nothing in his hands. What do I do? Seeing the situation, Yuan Jiang could only helplessly inform, gold soup needs to be poured between 2 blue gold bricks, and then spells are used to reinforce them. During the entire process, you have to notice to not damage the formations already on the blue gold bricks. The root of the wall needs to be set up with earth element formations to connect them to the earth veins, so they can root themselves in the earth and become hard to shake. After the city walls are completed, bigger formations have to be drawn onto the surface of the outside walls. Yuan Jiang had already prepared and handed Suemo a jade scroll. There were all kinds of detailed explanations in it, like the recipe for the gold soup. Gold soup was a substance that was created by mixing all kinds of gold element materials together. After he finished reading the entire scroll, Suemo suddenly asked, Can't I just melt the 2 blue gold bricks together? Melt them together? Yuan Jiang was dumbstruck, how to melt? Suemo himself was not so confident about the idea he just had and decided to try. He put the 2 blue gold bricks together, and then he summoned the golden crow fire. After some thought, the spell on his hands changed, and the golden crow fire seemed to be pulled in 4 directions by an invisible force. Yuan Jiang's eyes were wide as he stared at the changes in Suemo's golden crow fire. The golden crow fire gradually spread out and became increasingly thin until it was as thin as paper, an extremely thin golden piece of fire paper. At this point, the fire paper did not change anymore, but slowly flew towards the 2 blue gold bricks that were stacked together. The fire paper paused in front of the blue gold brick and then burrowed into the gap between the 2 blue gold bricks. The fire paper quickly spread out flat between the 2 pieces of blue gold bricks. A short while later, the brick surfaces facing the gap started to melt at the same time. There were no other signs of melting in the other parts of the brick. Suemo's expression was serious. His consciousness was spread to its limits. Seeing that it was almost enough, the fire paper suddenly flew out between the 2 blue gold bricks. The 2 blue gold bricks instantly stuck together. Xuemo didn't dare to pause, and sent out 5 spells according to the description on the jade scroll. The lights from the 5 spells accurately hit the merge point between the 2 blue-gold bricks. When the last spell entered the 2 pieces of blue-gold bricks, what appeared in front of everyone was a single piece of blue-gold brick. It appeared to be one body, the surface as bright and smooth as a mirror without any gap. Yuan Jiang was so shocked he couldn't speak. It wasn't just him. All the other forging shio that were watching were left dumbstruck when they saw Xuemo's skill with controlling fire. Xuemo released a long breath. Good, good, he didn't embarrass himself too much. He felt slightly proud. Pointing at the big blue gold brick that had just been forged, he said, "Go try and see what the effect is." Yuan Jiang was startled out of his daze and hurriedly arranged for an assessment of the new blue gold brick. After a while, he ran back with an excited expression. "Boss, boss. Strong. It really is too strong." Xuemo wanted to know the results. Hearing Yuan Jiang filled with meaningless words, he couldn't control himself. "Tell me the result." There was still some hint of disbelief in Yuan Jiang's eyes. "This is the strongest brick that this subordinate has ever seen. Definitely the strongest. We did a comparison with the best gold soup. Boss's fire paper method was about 2 times stronger than reinforcing with the gold soup. We also found when there is too much outside force, the entire blue gold brick would turn to powder, but before that, it never shows a crack. The ones made with the gold soup will crack at the mortar joints of the 2 blue gold bricks if the outside force is large enough." Hearing Yuan Jiang blab on, Xuemo's head felt dizzy. He could only ask, "So my method is better?" "Better. Much much better." Yuan Jiang was so excited he couldn't control himself. The increase in strength that Boss method would provide to the city walls was greater than any method he knew. The other 2 people were also very excited. Xuemo was very smug inside, and he did not feel much excitement. However, it was not hard for him to understand why Yuan Jiang and the others were excited. If they didn't like it, who would study something as obscure as city construction? When a breakthrough development happened in an area a person liked, no one would be able to keep their composure. "Oh, you guys can study the remaining. I'm going to start the work." Xuemo didn't plan on wasting time. Time was very expensive. The Ling power spat out of his hand and coiled around 20 blue gold bricks like a Ling snake. He directly put them on his shoulder. He felt his shoulders suddenly weigh down, his feet sinking into the earth. It was really heavy. These blue gold bricks were all forged from large slabs of bluestone. Even though the volume had shrunk, the weight had not lessened. If it was any other person, they would have been pounded into paste when the 20 pieces were put on their shoulders. Xuemo steadied his body and released a breath. Pulling his leg out of the mud, he started to charge towards the foundation. Bam bam bam. Each time Xuemo's step landed, the earth would shake. Everyone in the surroundings inhaled in shock. There were 2 Diana Shio in the 2 platoons who had stayed behind. Seeing this inhuman feat, they were very embarrassed. Which motherfucker said that Boss was a sword Shio? Chapter 253, Golden Crow Walls. The blue gold bricks were neatly stacked together. The flying fire paper spread out and rolled, sometimes as straight as a knife as it passed through the gaps between the blue gold bricks. Xuemo's expression was serious, a faint layer of light in his eyes. The fire paper danced faster and left behind beautiful golden trails in the air. His Ling eyes and consciousness were stretched to their limits. No flow of Ling power in the surroundings could escape Xuemo's perception. His hands were like flowers blooming. Xuemo's well-practiced finger motions were completely used. His half-raised hands were always in the middle of countless afterimages that flickered in and out. Many Shioja couldn't help but put down what they were doing to come watch. Occasionally, gasps would sound out from among the crowd. Everyone was intoxicated. These shoujo were mostly non-combat production shoujo. They were one of the classes that emphasized finger motions the most. Zhuo Mo's precise Ling power control did not waste one drop of energy. In their eyes, he was comparable to the most classic examples. This was an experience to be enjoyed. If Zhuo Mo moving the blue gold bricks previously had been the most basic and bare example of strength, then the grand finger motions and the amazing Ling power control now represented the highest levels of control and technique. It was the first time Zhuo Mo had tried using his consciousness and Ling Eye at the same time. After a very short amount of time, he felt the benefits. The world in his eyes had never been so lively and dimensional in his eyes. His consciousness could detect every detail of the objects in front of him, his Ling eyes could detect every change in the Ling power. He was almost able to see the patterns behind the walls. With a glance, he would know everything in his field of vision. This also caused his efficiency to skyrocket, and lead to the scene occurring right now. Yuan Jiang had lost all power of speech. What was happening before his eyes surpassed the limits of his imagination. With a speed visible to the naked eyes, the blue-gold brick walls grew upwards. This kind of speed was outside of his knowledge. Even more, this was all done by a single person. This world was too insane. The last thread of his rationality caused him to look at the remaining blue-gold bricks. He instantly shook and his soul came back into his body. Of the mountain of blue-gold bricks that had been piled up before, there were not even 100 pieces left. He thought of his role as the supervisor and ordered people to transport blue-gold bricks. Other people did not have Zhuo Mo's physical strength, and could only use talismans. Instantly, all the talismans were put to use. Flying swords, ling hos, jade scepters etc. all turned to a long line. Several bricks hung below each talisman. These bricks were way too heavy. After a few round trips, the blue-gold bricks once again piled into a mountain. Yuan Jiang released a breath inside, and his expression relaxed. Just as Yuan Jiang's expression eased, Ji Wei and Sun Bao's expressions became nervous. The two of them had been entranced in Boss' grand performance had suddenly reacted when they saw Yuan Jiang summon people to transport blue-gold bricks. The two rapidly calculated how many blue-gold bricks were remaining, and their faces changed. Based on Boss' terrifying speed, the remaining blue-gold bricks would quickly be unable to keep up with demand. The two of them were responsible for forging. If something happened here, they could not deflect their fault. Previously, the two of them had feared Boss more than they respected him. Now that they had personally seen the abilities of Boss, they were full of respect to the point that they kowtowed. The more respect they held, the more they were unwilling to drag Boss down due to their own mistakes. The two of them exchanged a look and did not hesitate in herding off the forging shoujo that were watching. Work. Immediately. Anyone that dares to slow down, will cut your wages. Those that are making blue-gold bricks, listen. The wage for each piece is increasing by 50%. The two played good and bad, one punished while the other rewarded. The shoujo that made blue-gold bricks instantly ran off to work. They may have been motivated by Boss, or by the high wages, but each person was full of motivation. The camp was very busy. Ma Fan is so meddlesome. Lei Ping looked at the paper crane in his hands and muttered. He handed the paper crane to the platoon captain beside him in frustration. After the platoon captain finished reading, he couldn't help but ask, "What do we do?" Lei Ping said, frustrated, "What to do? Do according to what he says." Then he muttered, "This guy had been the Corps before, he should know more." The platoon captain was used to Lei Ping's impatient tone. He knew that Lei Ping did not have malicious aims, but he was frustrated with having to take along greenhorns. He was an old member so he understood very well. Sometimes, even he would feel frustrated, much less a battle maniac like Lei Ping. As the order passed down, everyone's figures quickly disappeared. In a patch of wood about 200 li far from Lei Ping. "Can Ma Fan Darren's plan work?" the platoon captain asked Xia Shan uncertainly. Xia Shan smiled and replied, he was the core before. Of all of us, he received the most teachings from Gongsun Darren. None of us are likely to surpass him. This is really a big plan, the platoon captain sighed. Xia Shan smiled and said, let's start. At the same time, more than 10 troops led by other people quietly hid in places about 800 li from Nanxing village. This distance was very well grasped. Usually, the range of scouting troops were around 1,500 li. This distance was about half of that. The suggestion Ma Fan gave them was to carefully sneak in and kill the little troops of Xianxia as they were coming back. The Xianxia that were coming back would not have much Ling power after long-distance flight, and their combat power should be at a relatively low level. In the hearts of the Xianxia of Clear Sky Sect Outer Hall, this position was a relatively safe area. They would not be so high alert and may relax their guard. Of course, even more importantly, they could successfully reach the position of the plan. As long as they could do this, Ma Fan's string of plans had a high probability of success. In many people's view, Lil Miss campaign this time was slightly unexpected, but when battle started, they found that they were wrong. Lil Miss had done extremely detailed preparations. This was seen from the moment the first battle started. Wei Ran securely remembered Lil Miss's order. In the first charge, they did not use all of their power like they usually did. They only used the first charge of the 3-section wave-killing charge. The third division he led was like a knife that had ran out of power, having cut only halfway into the enemy ranks. The faces of some of the other division leaders that were present all changed dramatically. The 3-section wave-killing charge was to be completed altogether. It was to be like a heavy blade, cutting everything in half. If it halted in the enemy ranks, and was surrounded in all directions, and if their side had lost the momentum, then it was an extremely dangerous situation. But Lil Miss did not even look, and continued to add large numbers of fighters towards the flanks of the enemy. After a while, everyone found that Wei Ran, who they thought would have lost many people, were only lightly damaged. Wei Ran's mission was to trap 16 Xianxia. These 16 Xianxia were the strongest power in the enemy ranks. It was not that their combat abilities were powerful, but the contribution they made towards their troop. These 16 people were a rare group, Seal Xiao. Because the attack had been extremely abrupt, these 16 Xianxia hadn't had the time to spread out before Wei Ran caught them all. Seal Xiao were not famed for their combat abilities, but they were skilled in using all kinds of seal curses which could dramatically increase the combat abilities of the Xianxia around them. The first people Lil Miss dealt with were them. He used Wei Ran to cut the connection between them and the other Xianxia. The balance of battle quickly tilted towards Lil Miss' side. The 16 Seal Xiao looked with terror at the enemy that surrounded them, their hands nervously grasping stacks of seal papers. The mood was extremely tense. One of the Seal Xiao couldn't bear it, the seal paper on his hand unconsciously lighting up. He then heard eldest Xixiang shout, "Don't attack." The seal paper on his hands was instantly blown apart. This group of Seal Xiao were led by a middle-aged person of about 40 years old. Seeing his calm expression, the other people gradually calmed down from their fear. Once they calmed down, they detected the strangeness. The other side might have surrounded them tightly, but did not seem to have any intentions of attacking. The Xianxia that had almost attacked was filled with fear. If he had actually attacked just now, then he would really have caused a great disaster. Without the support of the Seal Xiao, the other Xianxia quickly collapsed as they faced the extremely sharp juggernaut of the 3-section wave-killing charge. The other troops in Gongsun Cha's command had already went back to block the retreat paths and to stop the scattered enemy from running around. The battle quickly ended. There was no joy on Gongsun Cha's face. The strength level of the two sides were not on the same level. If he couldn't defeat these people, then he really had suffered through Pu Yao's abuse for nothing. However, when his eyes turned towards the Seal Xiao, they lit up. If Chen Yucheng was here, he would definitely be shocked to find Gongsun Cha's gaze right now was the same as Weimo Shixiang's when he saw a fat sheep. Gongsun Cha showed his trademark bashful smile. The city walls progressed quickly. Zhuo Mo had thrown himself into the work, and forgot everything. He used the black procession meditation mat to resupply Ling power, and continued, then resupply. He mechanically repeated. The changes in the fire paper gradually decreased. The feeling of grandness slowly disappeared. What took over was accuracy and cleanness. It was as though Zhuo Mo did not know exhaustion until night. When the stars rose above his head, he would stop, sit on the unfinished walls and meditate. When the sun rose on the second day, he would rise on time, and start work again. Facing such a crazy boss, Ji Wei and Sun Bao were almost driven to insanity. The two of them led the other Xiaoxia and used all their power to just barely manage to keep up with Zhuo Mo's speed so that the construction did not stop due to the lack of blue gold bricks. 10 days, the city walls were finished. The blue gold city walls were 10 zhang deep. They were not imposing, but it was still amazing because there were no gaps to be seen on the city walls. They were as smooth as a mirror. When every person stood on the walls, they could not help but reach to touch. Suddenly, the cloud layer above the sky star peak suddenly dissipated. A golden pillar of light came down from the sky, and covered the just finished city walls. The city walls seemed to be a sponge, continuously absorbing the golden light for an hour. All the Xiaoxia in Sky Star Peak were alerted to this apparition. The golden light slowly faded until it disappeared. The cloud layer in the sky closed again. The blue-gold walls of the city exuded a faint golden light. The presence of the sun golden crow, with the city walls as the center, rippled out towards the surroundings like a wave. Chapter 254, The Metamorphosis of Jade Metal Head. The completion of the city walls, and the apparition it caused motivated everyone. These were the smallest city walls they had ever seen, not even 10 zhang high. These were also the shortest city walls they had ever seen. However, at this time, these short city walls always attracted their gaze. The mirror-smooth blue-gold city walls faintly exuded the sun's warm presence. Whenever they raised their heads in the camp to look at the little city on the mountain peak, they seemed to be filled with inexhaustible strength. Every morning, the sunlight would form into a faint gold pillar visible to the naked eye and cover the little city. In the future, they would move in, living behind these kind of city walls. It would be very warm. Everyone thought on the inside. In this chaotic and cruel little mountain Jia, unconsciously, this little golden crow city had added a hint of warmth to their hearts. It was an innate desire for sunlight and warmth. Without any urging required, everyone worked furiously day and night. Zhuo Mo did not know any of this. He was still constructing the city, and forgot everything else. The completion of the city walls for the entire city construction was just the first step. The amount of work left was enormous. Yuan Jiang did not speak of the lack of manpower anymore. He did his best to point out the places boss needed to pay attention to. Every time his eyes glanced across the little golden crow city walls, he couldn't help but be entranced. This was the most beautiful and perfect city walls he had ever seen. He had exclaimed countless times inside. What amazed him even more was Boss' deep skill with formations. Boss was the most skilled formation Xiaoxia he had ever seen. The 10 zhang high city walls had a 20 zhang deep foundation. The entire city walls were one body. In the deepest part of the foundation, there were earth element formations carved every 2 steps. All of them were 4th grade formations. Earth vein root, granite steel overgrowth, and fire lotus foundation, were all arranged in a zigzag fashion. Whenever Yuan Jiang thought of the thought that Boss put into picking these 3 formations, he couldn't help but sigh in admiration. Earth vein root, acted like 10,000 roots that deeply penetrated into the earth, unable to be broken. Granite steel overgrowth was an extremely obscure formation. It could cause granite around it to harden and would then continue to spread outwards like vines. Yuan Zhang felt slight pity. If clear sky sect did not exist, in 20 to 30 years, the entire Sky Star Peak's granite would be hardened. At that time, it would be impenetrable. What he felt was the cleverest was, Fire Lotus Foundation. Fire Lotus Foundation was an extremely common formation, mostly used in forging and danmaking. It could form the base of a fire lotus. Lingdan and talismans would form on the lotus base. It was very creative to use it here. The walls of Golden Crow City was able to absorb Golden Crow fire. Over time, this would be a very terrifying prospect. These, lotus fire foundations, could continue to temper the walls. Even though the effects would not be evident, but as time passed, it would become significant. Even more, fire bore earth. The effects of the two earth element formations would also increase. It was a great pity. The more Yuan Zhang looked, the more he liked it. However, when he thought of the city walls becoming the main battlefield for Clear Sky Old Forefather, and being destroyed, he felt even more reluctant. Suemo himself didn't feel anything. The inside of the city had been divided into districts. Places like the camp and residential areas had been completely left alone so they could build it themselves. What he was building now were the Formation Battle Watchtowers. Formation Battle Watchtowers were the most important battle units of each city. There would all kinds of offensive formations on it. With the Shouja inside it controlling the formations, it could attack the enemy. The formations inside the Formation Battle Watchtowers were all powerful offensive formations and usually needed many Shouja to work together. Other than the protection offered by the city wall defenses, the Formation Battle Watchtowers were one of the most important combat units that determined whether the place could be held. At the beginning, Suemo didn't even think of building a big city. The only purpose of this little city was combat. Other than the necessary living spaces, Suemo decided to use all other areas to construct the watchtowers. Facing a Jindan Shouja, it was not embarrassing to win through numbers. The construction of Formation Battle Watchtowers was not difficult, and it was not a secret. The jade scroll that Yuan Zhang had given him had extremely detailed descriptions. Of course, he didn't follow exactly what the scroll said, those were just mainstream knowledge. If he wanted something good, he had to put in effort himself. Before the Formation Battle Watchtowers were built, Suemo's jade metal head Mo physique unexpectedly had a breakthrough. The breakthrough was very sudden this time. There was no warning. Even Pu Yao did not detect it, much less Suemo who had been in the depths of studying Formation Battle Watchtowers. The metamorphosis of a Mo physique was unexpectedly terrible. Just as he was pondering Formation Battle Watchtowers, a cloud of bloody mist suddenly exploded out of Suemo's body. The eyes of the female Xiao that was closest to him suddenly lit up with a strange purple light. Her body did not move. The powerful bloody mist charged to 2 steps in front of her before it seemed to be stopped by an invisible wall. The empty eyes of the 3 golden armor guards lit up. The 3 of them raised their swords and blocked the charge of the bloody mist. Yuan Zhang, who was not far from Suemo, did not have the strength to resist. It was like he had been hit with a heavy hammer. He felt a great force pass over, sending him flying and into unconsciousness. This was just a start. Bam bam bam. Clouds of bloody mist continuously exploded out of Suemo's body. Each burst contained extremely powerful momentum. The ground under his feet had already turned into a deep hole due to the explosions. The golden armor on the 3 golden armor guards rattled. They hurriedly braced their waist and legs, the light in their eyes were at a maximum as they managed to resist the charge of the bloody mist. When the 3rd wave of bloody mist exploded, the energy contained in the bloody mist reached a terrifying level. The 3 golden armor guards could not block it. Dong dong dong, they were pushed to 15 steps away before they could steady their bodies. From beginning to now, the female Xiao did not move. The exaggerated black mask and the eerie purple pupils flashed in and out of sight in the bloody mist. She suddenly reached out with her right hand and grabbed at the bloody mist. The bloody mist in front of her instantly condensed, and a bean-sized blood bead appeared in her hand. After that, both of her hands grabbed at the empty air. All of the bloody mist had been condensed into blood beads. Ding ding dong dong. The blood beads rang out as they fell onto the ground. The bloody mist had been swept away and revealed Zhuo Mo's true body. Zhuo Mo's body was covered in gore. It was as though the gore was alive as it slowly moved. It looked extremely terrifying. The female Xiao silently looked at the bloody figure of Zhuo Mo. In Zhuo Mo's sea of consciousness, Pu Yao couldn't help but sigh with shock, such a powerful girl. He then lowered his head, and said to himself, so quickly. Is this body really this suited to this path? He suddenly seemed to detect something and raised his head. The black clouds around the gravestone had disappeared. The purple light in the eyes of the female Xiao suddenly exploded. A hint of black energy suddenly appeared in the gore wrapped around Zhuo Mo's body. The threads of black energy were like strands of hair and also extremely hard to notice. The female Xiao stared for a while before the purple light in her eyes gradually dimmed. The gore on Zhuo Mo's body moved restlessly for more than 4 hours before gradually calming down. After 4 more hours, a person-high cocoon of blood appeared in the deep hole of the ground. The second batch. The platoon captain was very excited. Adding on the group that they had just destroyed, they had successfully ambushed 2 groups of Clear Sky Sect Outer Hall Xiozhia that had been returning. Their luck was pretty good. From the information passed on through the paper cranes, several platoons hadn't encountered anyone at all. Continuous battle caused their platoon Xiozhia to quickly grow. Their combat had finally shown some hint of organization. For this, they had paid the price of 3 people. Ma Fan inattentively made a sound in response. He was pondering what he may have not considered in his previous idea. Lil Miss's intentions were very clear. Do their best to delay the enemy so that the enemy could not find their main camp, and try to earn more time for the construction of the city. On the other hand, they couldn't fight too fiercely, causing Clear Sky Old Forefather to come out personally. No one could deal with that. There were too many places that had to be measured in here. But from the present situation, the development of the situation had not left his predictions. Holding a piece of green grass in his mouth, he raised his head to look at the faraway sky. The battle had just begun. Nanxing Village. 10 little troops have been killed. Ah! You group of trash. 200 people. That is 200 people. Even if it was 2 motherfucking stones, there would be a sound if they're thrown into the water. Under great pressure, Xiang finally lost all restraint and bellowed. The subordinates shivered, and the other elders remained silent. Malicious joy came into many people's eyes. Xiang suddenly turned his head, and looked at the other elders. His eyes were filled with blood, his features twisted, the tendons in his head bulging like earthworms. His voice was deep like a lion that had been forced to death's door. Alright, you guys are just watching. Ha, you really think that only I would be punished if we don't do this right? None of you will be able to escape. Don't forget Old Forefather's temper. The faces of the other elders all changed uncontrollably. He raised his head, and said in a voice full of scorn and disdain, I'm the chief elder, but is nothing to Old Forefather. You guys, which of you cannot be replaced? Don't forget, it is very easy for the outer hall to hire Xiozhia. Would it be difficult to find new elders? You all should be clear how important this is. If we cannot even accomplish the first task for the outer hall, ha! Everyone saw the terror in each other's eyes. Even though it was Chief Elder that was in control of the outer hall right now, but if Old Forefather really investigated, none of them would escape. What they were doing now was related to the foundation for the dominion of Clear Sky Sect in Little Mountain Jia. One elder stood up. That's right. This is not the time for us to fight among ourselves. We should cooperate and overcome this obstacle. I agree, another elder stood up. Other elders continued to stand and express their agreement. Second elder's expression was slightly ugly, but he also stood up. I also agree. Chief elder's anger instantly disappeared, and even had a smile on his face. As long as we cooperate, we will definitely capture this group of clowns quickly. Of the 7 elders, except for him, they were all named my third stratum experts. The mood of Nanxing village had suddenly changed. All the people walking on the street were ordered to return home. All flow of resources were stopped, and all people were banned from travel. Even though the leaders of the various factions objected, but they were instantly suppressed. They were put under house arrest. The Clear Sky Sect Outer Hall sent down its first 10,000 fire emergency order. The Outer Hall Xiaoxia that had been prepared to send out to other places in Little Mountain Jia were all summoned back. The Xiaoxia number in Nanxing village continued to increase. The leaders that were under house arrest felt insecure when they saw this and were wise enough to stay in their homes. The enormous Outer Hall gathered strength at an unprecedented efficiency. Editor. Chapter 255, New Sky Glass Waves. Mo once again broke out of the cocoon. His body seemed to have changed again. The skin that once had a black sheen now seemed slightly transparent like black jade. There was none of the shock that came with the first transformation. Mo examined his body with curiosity. Thankfully, there was not much change on his face. It wasn't that he was afraid of becoming ugly, but it was not a good feeling when the face he had recently adjusted to had become strange once again. He tested his strength. It was about 2/10 greater than before. Not bad, he thought inside as he started the Sky Wave Fist scripture. He wanted to see how many revolutions his arms could tolerate this time. 14 revolutions had been the limit when he had faced the bloody horned serpent last time. He started the Sky Glass Wave, and the Ling power quickly circulated through his arms. Starting from the 7th revolution, his arms started to feel inflated. After 10 revolutions, the feeling of inflation in his arms became more evident. After 12 revolutions, the feeling of inflation became even more pronounced in his arms. After that, with every new revolution, the feeling of inflation should increase greatly. When it reached 12 revolutions, Mo's mind jumped. It was possible. Even though his arms felt very inflated, but there was still leeway compared to last time. He continued to channel Ling power. He wanted to see where the limits of his new body were. 14 revolutions, there was a pain caused by the feeling of the pressure. 16 revolutions, Mo felt like his arms were going to explode. Threads of light flooded out of his arms, and swam along his arms like little snakes moving about. It was the first time Mo had seen such a thing. He knew that if he completed 2 more revolutions, the Sky Glass Wave would probably undergo another change. He weighed his options. He felt that he could still tolerate more. Bracing his heart, he continued to channel Ling power. 17 revolutions, the feeling of explosion in his hands became even stronger, and a needle-like pain appeared. The light of the fist energies around his arms became even thicker, and the rate of movement increased. The air around him did the exact opposite, their rate of flow was decreasing continuously. At 18 revolutions, the lights that swam around his arms increased in speed, and showed extremely unique whirlpool fist energies. Due to the increase in speed, the thread-like fist energies that had been wrapped around his elbow joints quickly were pulled astray. They were like springs that were pressed down by an invisible force. The spring discs that were now flat quickly revolved with amazing speed at Mo's fists. Mo knew that this was his limit. The air around him had stopped flowing as though it had turned solid at this moment. Without a hesitation, Mo raised both his hands, and shouted, "Go!" The center of the disc-shaped fist energies seemed to have been heavily struck and turned into the start of a helix that flew out with astounding speed. There was no sound, no howling. When the two fist energies left his fists, they seemed to have disappeared into the air. They were so quick that Xuemo himself did not catch them. As these two fists were released, the Ling power and strength in Xuemo's body seemed to have been completely pulled out. Extremely sore, he collapsed onto his bottom on the ground. After a while, he managed to struggle up and sway over to inspect the result of his two punches. 20 zhang away, 2 holes bored into the earth, each was more than 2 zhang in diameter. They were so deep the bottoms could not be seen. Xuemo couldn't help but show slight joy as he gaped. It wasn't possible to create this kind of clean and deep hole, like a knife cutting tofu, with just raw strength. The power of the 18 revolutions sky glass wave was definitely more than twice as powerful as the 14 revolutions one. Because there were not quantifiable measurements, he could only make a general estimate on its power. Xuemo instantly became happy. Pu Yao's methods were quite painful, but they were very effective. After this metamorphosis, the strength of his body had taken another leap forward. Otherwise, it wouldn't have stood up to support the 18 revolutions. The technique required in the sky glass wave was not high, but starting from 12 revolutions, the demands on the body rapidly increased with each additional revolution. This jade metal head really lived up to being Mo physique, it was full of potential. Xuemo wondered inside about going to ask Pu Yao some other time to see if he could press some more out. When he had been at Wukong Mountain, when he heard the mention of Yama, he would fear it. Now that he had experienced more, he didn't have much feeling. What Mo physique, what Yao art? When it was used, where was the energy of Yama? He didn't feel that his personality had become evil and vicious. As he experienced more, he gradually could see clearly. The so-called Yao, Mo, and Xianxia were just different cultivation paths for different innate talents. Like the Yao, born from flora or the essence of the world. They were born understanding the power of the world, and naturally learned how to use their consciousness as a lever to manipulate the power of the world. Mo were born from intelligent beasts, with strong bodies and a Mo matrix. It was no wonder they walked the path of awakening the potential of their bodies. And Xianxia were humans. Their bodies were not strong, not close to the world, but they were intelligent. It was rational they would walk the path of assimilating outside forces to their benefit. He gradually understood the hatred between Yama and Xianxia as he spent this time in Little Mountain Jie. The Ling power that Xianxia cultivated emphasized using outside objects. They needed all kinds of resources. Jingxia required Jingxia mines, Ling grains, and other Ling grasses needed Ling veins. Forging talismans required all kinds of materials, needed ores, and other precious treasures of the world. But no matter if it was ore, or Ling veins, all of them needed tens of thousands of years to mature. Even those treasures of the world usually needed several thousand years before they would mature. But who could wait for more than 1,000 years? Xianxia could only continuously expand out and find new jie. However, this meant conflict with Yaoma could not be avoided. In here, it couldn't be said who was right or wrong. No matter if it was Xianxia or Yaoma, these were all for their existence, for development. Xuemo did not have good feelings about Yaoma but held no dislike. Things like wars were not something a little character like him had to worry about. After gradually understanding this, Xuemo did not have any more mental barriers about cultivating Mo's skills and Yao arts. Without mental barriers, his progress in cultivating was naturally quick. Before, he had always struggled with the concept of talent. His talent with swords was really very average. If Pu Yao did not exist, he may never have cultivated to sword essence. That was a sword essence created through being cut up thousands of times. His talent with formations and the 5 elements were more exceptional. Now he felt that while talent was important, but many things could not be explained by talent. Comprehension was comprehension, incomprehension was incomprehension. If one did not have talent, they would still be strong if they could comprehend. If they had talent, and did not comprehend, there was no use. Talent could increase the probability of comprehension, but it was not always a certainty. There wasn't just talent, even talismans and spells could be included in this. Even if the grade was higher, and the power was greater, but it depended on whether it was suited to oneself. The Sky Wave Fist Scripture was just a third-grade fist scripture without any exceptional qualities. For the great majority of Diana Xiao, it was very normal in terms of power, but in Zhuo Mo's hands, it was incredibly powerful. It was not that other Diana Xiao could not understand the profoundness of Sky Glass Wave, but that their bodies just could not tolerate the shocking burden that came with the 18 revolutions of Ling power. Zhuo Mo comprehended many things. The 18 revolution Sky Glass Wave increased Zhuo Mo's confidence, but he only had the power for one attack. Jin Dan Xiuzhe, like the clear sky old forefather, moved like lightning. It would be extremely hard to hit them. His anticipation of the formation he was going to set up increased. He suddenly saw the scattered blood beads beside the feet of the female Xiao and made a sound of surprise. Where did these come from? The female Xiao did not respond. Zhuo Mo muttered inside but still collected the blood beads. The blood beads sparkled as though each one was made from fresh blood. When held in his hands, he felt a feeling of closeness. Facing the silent female Xiao, Zhuo Mo did not have any ideas. The female Xiao of unknown name and history was a mystery all over. As to whether or not she was mute, that was just ridiculous. With the female Xiao's deep cultivation, even if she was born with a natural deficiency, there were countless ways to fix it. She didn't speak, there was only one reason. She didn't want to speak. The only person that Zhuo Mo could ask was Pu Yao. He had too many questions he had accumulated. Pu Yao was not surprised at Zhuo Mo's arrival. I know what you want to ask. He was sitting cross-legged on the gravestone, lazily supporting his chin with his hand. The gleaming black sleeve naturally fell down, and revealed an arm that was even paler than that of a woman's. The right bloody pupil that was not covered by his hair was slightly open. The greatest unique quality of the jade metal head is equilibrium. Even though none of it is outstanding, but it is pretty good in every area. In this period of time, you had been practicing with your body, Ling power, and consciousness. It has matured. Several questions came into Zhuo Mo's mind after Pu Yao's words. I know the relationship of Ling power and the body, the Ling channels. But what relationship is there between the consciousness and the body? The jade metal had matured. What do you mean matured? Pu Yao rolled his eyes. He had gotten used to Zhuo Mo frequently asking him questions he found extremely idiotic. How can there not be a connection? Those with strong bodies usually have strong minds. Ling power, body, and consciousness, the three of them come from the same source. Do the Xiuzhe of present not know this? Zhuo Mo's face was already as thick as city walls. He snickered, and was not angry at Pu Yao's mockery. Then what about the level up of jade metal head? Mo physique, there was no maturity in the beginning. At the start, everyone just found that some special bodies were very suited to practicing Mo skills. Over time, everyone called them Mo physiques. After that, about tens of thousands of years, I'm not too clear about Mo's history. Oh, don't think that Xiuzhe have the longest history. The history of Yaomua is much longer than the history of Xiuzhe. Zhuo Mo found that Pu Yao showed hints of going off topic and hurriedly pulled him back. Then why was there leveling up later? Because of advancement, Pu Yao said, then continued, jade metal head is captain level, and star and moon wheel is colonel level. This is called advancement. Maturation. Mo physiques are very special kinds of bodies, but they have a common quality, they can grow. Isn't it interesting? Having Mo physique, it does not mean that your body is stronger than other people, but that you have more potential than other people. I seem to understand a bit. Potential needs to be stimulated before it can turn to strength. Pu Yao nodded. Right, that's the idea. Maturation, it means the degree that the potential of your MO physique has been expressed. Maturation and advancement have a strong connection. Only MO physiques of sufficient maturity can advance. In other words, even if I can cultivate to moon soul, if my maturation is not enough, I cannot cultivate to star and moon wheel. Right. There is much scholarship associated with the advancement of MO physiques. There are many paths that Jade Metalhead can advance to. Star and moon wheel is only one of them. For example, there is also the mountain fiend route that emphasizes strength, the clear wind fighter that emphasizes lightness and agility. They had explored many kinds of weird advancement pathways. I only know the generalities. Then what is my maturation right now? Suemo hurriedly asked the question he was most concerned about. Chapter 256, Variable, U. Just first maturation. Pu Yao looked at the anticipation on Suemo's face, and did not hesitate in his blows. Basically, advancement is only possible at third maturation. Little bro, it's early for you. Hearing this, Suemo couldn't help but feel disappointed. Why is advancement this difficult? Difficult? Pu Yao smirked coldly. What difficulty is this? Good things are not so easy to get. That's true. Suemo thought and found that it was right. He still remembered his time when he planted ling grains. Not talking about those good items, but even for those spells to reach a grade, at that time, he had to put in all of his energy to get. His days had only gotten better after he had met Pu Yao. Pu Yao would occasionally do something bad to him, but Suemo never really took to heart. Without Pu Yao, he would still be an outer sect disciple of Wukong's sword sect. His attitude towards Pu Yao and the mysterious gravestone were the same. He could accept everyone making some transactions. To receive good things, he had to pay a price. This was reasonable, a matter of consent. But if the other was going to force him, he won't take it. What are these blood beads? Nothing, just the beads made from your essential blood. Suemo instantly jumped in fright. My essential blood? What time? How come Ji didn't know? He looked at Pu Yao with slightly unfriendliness, his tone changing. Had this guy done something again? None of Ji's business. Pu Yao rolled his eyes and mimicked Suemo's tone. Your woman did it. Ji's woman. Suemo stilled. When did Ji have a woman? The one wearing the mask. Pu Yao undoubtedly had extreme talent in being a ruffian. As he learned a little bit, the disrespectful attitude was born. He clearly was a high-grade ruffian of high status and identity, with some dignity in laziness. In comparison, Suemo with his twisted features and wiry hair was like the ruffians that ran about the streets with bricks. When did she do that? Suemo furrowed his brow. Don't be unable to recognize people's aid. Pu Yao unconcernedly glanced and then yawned. He lazily said, received the benefit and still pretending to be good. MO physiques will change during maturation. Oh, you were quite fierce, played with essence blood explosions. The other is very good, and help you condense them into blood beads so it wasn't a waste. However, she really is a powerful girl. Suemo's expression instantly became awkward. He had always been full of suspicion towards this woman of unknown origins. What's the use of this? The practical Suemo quickly pulled the topic onto the blood beads. There are many uses. If you cultivate Mo skills with blood and fiends, it is a very rare treasure. Right now, I can't think of any, Pu Yao said irresponsibly. Coming out of the sea of consciousness, Suemo coincidentally saw the female Xiao. It might have been Pu Yao's words, but he suddenly found her much more pleasing to look at. Thank you. He raised the blood beads, and thanked the female Xiu. He knew the female Xiu definitely wouldn't respond. After showing his appreciation, he turned and went back to the work of building the city. Zuemo didn't know that just as he turned around, a purple light flashed across the eyes behind the mask. Gongsun Cha gazed at the changes on the battlefield. He was continuously trying out new tactics. Any battle tactic, from seeing it, to familiarity, to understanding, the entire process required spending a lot of effort and thought. Even more important was actual use and experimentation. In the war chess, Pu Yao had shown many kinds of battle tactics to Gongsun Cha. Each tactic had its own qualities, but not every tactic was like the 3-section wave killing charge, being able to be used after just trying it out. The tactics related to the mixture of people, and the structure of the troops. In the war chess, there was only Yaoma. To say of nothing else, the combat methods of Yaoma and Xiuzha were extremely different. Just adapting the tactics over to use was not going to work. However, after being continuously abused by all kinds of tactics, Gongsun Cha's knowledge was much broader. No one told him what should be. He could only experiment to increase how long he could stand up under Pu Yao's hands. Mimicking, concluding, and experimenting. If it was a normal person, after they had a sweet taste of the 3-section wave killing charge's sharp blade, they would naturally worship it as the truth, the strongest weapon. However, Gongsun Cha was continuously experimenting with different tactics. Because it was difficult to find jade scrolls on battle formations, he had even asked Zuemo in hopes of finding more battle formations. Unconsciously, he walked onto a path that had surpassed what everyone imagined. About 20 li from them, there were 2 Xiuzha roaming about, watching the changes of the battlefield from a distance. Gongsun Cha ignored them. Each time they fought, they would encounter scouts like these from other factions. These scouts were extremely skilled in flight. They would only watch from afar. If they saw the situation wasn't right, they would instantly get on a sword and fly away. There was no way of dealing with them. So even though the scouts had been discovered, Gongsun Cha only ignored them other than preparing the necessary defenses to stop these scouts from participating in the fight. However, the 2 people that were watching were not scouts. Jiang Wei was a leader of a faction. Previously he had not noticed Gongsun Cha. However, he had become alerted when Gongsun Cha had plucked up several of the other factions in succession. He wasn't unfamiliar with these factions. They had interacted before. Even though Gongsun Cha was still a distance away from his base, but he felt unsafe. So he had followed his subordinate and pretended to be scout to personally see this mysterious troop. "Boss, that's them." His subordinate pointed at Gongsun Cha's group far away. Jiang Wei made a sound of acknowledgement. However, his heart was beating rapidly and his expression changed slightly. The battlefield seemed entrenched and chaotic, but to become a leader, how could he not have some good eyes? This mysterious group had clearly taken the lead. Right now, they were just playing with the other side, like a cat playing with a mouse. But after a while, he flinched with shock. That wasn't right. It wasn't playing. The chaotic battlefield gradually cleared up because this group started to organize themselves, and traces of organization. As he continued to watch, Jiang Wei's face paled, while his heart continuously dropped. This group's organization and tactics were beyond his imagination. These guys were trying new tactics. Their chaos was not created by the enemy, but by themselves. As they familiarized themselves with their new tactics, the battlefield quickly turned clear. He recognized the other side of the battle, Mustache Wang. Mustache Wang's conduct was extremely powerful, and skilled in battle. He had a group of lawless fighters under his command. When he saw the other, he had to call the other Wang Ji. But someone as powerful as Mustache Wang was being used by the other to try out battle tactics. He actually was not able to resist. Watching as Mustache Wang charged left and right with his band, but appearing as though he was sinking in the bog without a way out, a hint of sorrow came into Jiang Wei's heart. This group was too strong. Their cooperation was very high. It wasn't how smooth or grand their tactics were. In reality, he had seen the unfamiliarity in their cooperation at first glance. It should be a kind of tactic they had never used before. Mustache Wang did not lack skill. He had found the enemy's flaws several times, but just when the balance was to be upset, this group would use a different kind of battle tactic. That was the battle tactic they frequently used and were familiar with. It was astoundingly keen. Mustache Wang's furious counterattack would be torn to pieces in moments. Right after, this group would also return to their unfamiliar and new battle tactic in search of familiarizing their cooperation. And so it repeated. It's really terrifying. Jiang Wei muttered to himself. The subordinate didn't understand why leader would say it was scary. In his view, the two sides had fought for this long before this group had secured the advantage. They were not as strong as they were rumored to be. Jiang Wei did not explain. He rejoiced inside that he had made a correct decision today by coming. A hint of a smile finally came to Gong Sun Cha's lips. The Xianxia under his command finally found rhythm with his new battle tactic. Any kind of battle tactic, no matter how well people trained, was discounted in power unless they went through true battle. The situation on the battlefield had tens of thousands of variations. It was completely different than normal training. Just copying what they normally practiced was useless. As Lil Miss smiled, the rock in the hearts of the Xianxia beside him finally landed. The battle quickly ended. They had captured about 150 Xianxia. Seeing the dense black patch of Xianxia beside them, he couldn't help but rub his forehead. How many Xianxia have we already captured? 1,115 people, the subordinate gave a precise number. After some thought, Gong Sun Cha ordered, transport them back. It is not safe to take them with us for each battle. Send a division. Zuo was not here and could not put Jinji in these captives. Due to that, he could only take all their talismans and send people to guard them. Some of the Xianxia had been directly taken into the troops like those Seal Xiao, and 3 Sword Xiao who had comprehended sword essence, Mustache Wang among them. These captives were very docile. Every 2 or 3 days, they would see Gong Sun Cha and the others defeat a faction. Naturally, everyone was docile. They looked fearfully at the remaining 300 Xianxia. Even though their own numbers were 3 times that of Lil Miss, but no one dared to disobey. Before this, they had never thought there would be such a terrifying army. Of course, the Xianxia who had seen the Yao army would say the Yao army were the most powerful. But even those people had to admit that this troop was the strongest troop they had ever seen other than the Yao army. The subordinates had long ago suggested to Lil Miss to send the captives back. No one felt it was too few for 100-something people to transport more than 1,000 captives. This mission landed again on Wei Ran. Lil Miss felt that while Wei Ran's individual strength was average, but his mind was good and he was calm. This was a person worthy of nurturing. Truthfully, Wei Ran wasn't quite willing. He was enjoying the fight. If he had to transport the captives, wouldn't he fall behind the others? He had just gotten a taste of the new battle tactics. However, he did not dare to disobey Lil Miss commands. He could only lead his subordinates and dejectedly go to transport captives. Looking at a portion of the troop transporting a dark patch of Xianxia, Jiang Wei first stilled and then instantly understood. He couldn't help but shake his head. In his view, if they included these captives in the troop, it would actually cause the battle abilities of this terrifying troop to decrease. As long as one had these 300 people, where couldn't they go? Maybe they had other ideas, Jiang Wei thought. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. A daring idea came out. Chapter 257, One Small Step. Xiang's face was tight, but in reality, his mood was not as terrible as he displayed. The members of the outer hall were continuously gathering, which allowed the leaders of the factions in Nanxing village personally see the strength of the outer hall. Everyone was in danger now. Under this tense atmosphere, the secret alliance the faction leaders had brokered fell apart without any attack. They all chose to capitulate, and Xiang quickly got the price he wanted. Now, he only needed to catch the group of troublemakers before he would accomplish his goals. Looking at the xiuzha that covered the sky above Nanxing village, the cloud over Xiang's heart swept away. The number of xiuzha in the outer hall had reached a terrifying 3,000 people. Nanxing village was small to begin with. 3,000 xiuzha flying in the air was like a storm cloud. In his view, such a strong power could dominate all of Little Mountain Jia. If it wasn't that old forefather had personally made the captivity plan, he would have already suggested to take all of Little Mountain Jia into Clear Sky Sec's pocket. However, there wasn't much of a difference now, he thought contentedly. He had sent out large numbers of troops to search for the traces of those people. As soon as they found one trace, they could send out all their strength, and tear those damned people into 1,000 pieces. He believed that news would come very soon. Just as he was thinking this, an elder landed in front of him, and said excitedly, "We found the group. 200 or 300 people, up north, about 2,000 li from here. Our people have locked onto them." Xiang was exhilarated, and said hatefully, "As long as we can find them, then they will definitely die. Get the scouts at the front to keep alert and don't lose them. It's our turn to attack." "Haha, let them see the power of our outer hall," this elder also laughed. "We'll destroy them." Xiang was full of bravado. "We'll celebrate you when you get back." This elder was an ally he had been pursuing. "Ha. Wait for my good news." This elder laughed proudly before jumping back into the air. The xiuzha filling the sky started to quickly gather. Nian Lu was just as discontent as Wei Ran. His feet stepping on a lotus flower, he flew with the wind. His snowy white robes now seemed gray and dusty. After that handsome and light-hearted face seemed somewhat slow-witted after eating wind for more than 10 days. The platoon captain beside him also had an expression of dissatisfaction. "This group of bum beetles, they are so annoying. We have to even talk to them every day, but it's still those old faces, there's nothing new. But they don't have it easy either." The last words were full of emotion. He turned and hollered at the xiuzha beside him, "All of you, stay alert. Don't blame my flying sword if you don't listen." Beside him, other than his own subordinates, there were almost 200 unfamiliar xiuzha. These xiuzha all had their heads hanging down without energy. These were the xiuzha that they had captured when they took the time to especially sweep up two factions. The sweep had been done together by Lei Peng, Zhong Ru, and himself. Nian Lu's luck had been the worst and had lost in drawing straws, so that the most depressing job of baiting the enemy had fallen to him. These captives seemed to have extremely well-prepared Ling armor, but other than Ling armor, all other talismans and flying swords had been taken away. Just like this, Nian Lu led a platoon and 200 xiuzha as he flew openly towards the north. To make sure the other side didn't lose track of them, they had to maintain a moderate speed. What was most depressing was that he could not attend the upcoming battle, he could only continue to travel away. The greatest tragedy of life was this. Nian Lu said with sorrow and anger, slow down, don't let them lose track." At the base of a mountain about 400 li from Nanxing village was an extremely well-hidden mountain cave. "What are we waiting for? We're just guarding this place that even the birds don't shit, when can we go and do something?" Lei Peng rumbled. Everyone ignored him. Zhong Ru was sitting and meditating, Xia Shan had his eyes closed to rest. The other platoon captain wisely did not interrupt. With so many of the old-timers here, he did not have a turn to speak. Ma Fan shook his head helplessly. But it was his idea. It was so troublesome. He drawled, soon. Lei Ping snickered and said, "Little Nian Nian is probably being blown with a refreshing breeze right now." Light laughter came from the other people. Even Zhong Ru showed a hint of mirth at the corner of his lips. After killing those little groups last time, during that period of extremely short chaos, they had quietly sneaked in. This trip had been 7 days. Their luck was pretty good. They had found an extremely deep cave. With some camouflage added, it was a very good ambush point. This place was also very close to Nanxing village, right under the enemy's eyes. It was perfect for being dark under the lamp. Xia Shan suddenly opened his eyes. The other people instantly had wary looks. Xia Shan said lightly, "They've come." All the Shuzha instantly stopped talking. Xia Shan even extinguished the small light spell inside the cave. The cave instantly became pitch black. After a while, everyone felt streams of consciousness and strange Ling power sweep across their bodies. Fear rose in everyone's hearts. There were at least 2,000 people from Nanxing village that moved out this time. It could be seen that the outer hall had put a lot into destroying them. No one dared to move. All signs of life on their bodies disappeared. All breathing and heartbeats stopped. Even the temperature of their bodies decreased. They were like a pile of rocks. Ma Fan had taught them all a spell to conceal themselves from scouts since he was very skilled in concealment. To avoid attracting attention, they had not used any spell or formation to disguise the entrance of the cave. Formations were the best for disguise, but that was only for experts. If it wasn't a formation expert, the disguise formation setup would be eye-catching instead. They only used rocks and foliage to conceal and lessen the traces of themselves. They had also specially grabbed little animals like rabbits to put in the cave. There were too many caves in this area. Ma Fan had correctly predicted the other would not inspect the caves one by one. Wave after wave of surveillance continued for 2 hours. Even Xia Shan, with the highest cultivation, couldn't help but be shocked by the outer hall's strength. From the consciousness and Ling power that swept across their bodies, there were more than 10 Ningmai third stratum Shuzha. He was certain that more than 7/10 of the entire Little Mountain Jie's Ningmai third stratum had sided with the outer hall. One Ningmai third stratum was not scary, but 10 of them was definitely a great power. If he was the commander, he definitely would arrange for the 10 people to be together. Powerful Shuzha like this were terrifying when they were used together. Why had the Shuzha who comprehended sword essence like him been arranged together? He hadn't understood in the past, but after following Lil Miss for a time, and personally experiencing it, he now understood the benefits. However, what he admired the most right now was Ma Fan's cautiousness. Under Ma Fan's persistence, they had dug into the cave to an extreme depth. Then used slabs of rock to seal the top of the pit. These granite stones were more than 10 zhang thick, and had almost tired them to death at the time. The entire cave was now divided into 2 levels. Those little animals lived on the top level. At the time, some people had muttered that Ma Fan was making a mountain out of a molehill. Looking at it now, these measures had saved their lives. What he didn't know was that Ma Fan was also feeling fear. If anything had gone astray with the measures, then they would have been sealed in. No one would have been able to escape. Even when all the scans had disappeared, they still did not dare to move. Everyone was terrified by what had just occurred. After 10 whole hours, they finally recovered from the false death state. Whoa, they are terrifying. At least 2,000 people. Lei Ping exclaimed, his face slightly pale. It's 3,000, Zhong Ru suddenly spoke, there is also 13 third stratum. Everyone's faces became slightly ugly. Xia Shan looked at Zhong Ru with surprise. He was shocked at Zhong Ru's sensitivity. They really find us worthwhile. Haha, Laozi was so frightened right now, Laozi's body is still somewhat soft. Everyone discussed loudly. They were slightly afraid and shocked, but they were more excited. The outer hall had found them important enough to send out this many people. In Little Mountain Jia, there was no faction other than theirs who managed to cause such a reaction. Most of these people were lawless fighters. Battle maniacs like Lei Peng were not rare. The more it was like the present, the more motivated they were. Ma Fan was not as crazy as they were. He managed to calm his heartbeat, and wiped the cold sweat. He had been the core for so long, but it was the first time he had encountered such a risky situation like the one just now. When are we moving? Lei Peng rubbed his hands excitedly, his eyes shining as he looked at Ma Fan. Ma Fan forcibly repressed the impulse to kill the guy and rolled his eyes instead. Do you want to die faster? They haven't gone far away. If they turn back, none of us will escape. Lei Peng realized that his question seemed like it was troublemaking, especially when he saw the gazes looking at him like they were looking like an idiot. He rapidly gave a bright smile. See, after being frightened by them, An's mind doesn't work properly. 5 days. After calming down, Ma Fan's head turned cold and rational. We only need to wait 5 more days. Even if they want to turn back then, it wouldn't be enough. Everyone, get a good rest these 5 days. Otherwise, you'll see the other people rampage while you falter, Xia Shan said with a smile from the side. Sound disappeared from the mountain cave. Everyone suppressed the excitement inside, and meditated. They were like a group of experienced hunters making their last preparations before closing the net. Jiang Wei took the jade scroll his subordinate had handed over. He had sent out the Xiaoxia that had been most skilled in concealment to follow behind Wei Ran's group from far away, and successfully located this group's main base. When he scanned the jade scroll, his body froze. In the mirage of the jade scroll, at the top of a mountain peak was a sun city made from blue gold. The sunlight was like a keen sword cutting the sky and landing on this city. The faint golden light emitted from the little city gave people warmth like the sunlight. Jiang Wei's heart seemed to be suddenly gripped by an invisible hand. At that instant, it stopped beating. After an unknown length of time, he slowly refocused. There was almost no Xiaoxia in the empty city. All the blood in his body went to his head. With a glance, he could see how weak the city was. Even the troop that had sent the captives back had thrown the captives to the camp, and instantly left. An uncontrollable greed and yearning filled every hair of his body. The chapter title is the start of a Chinese idiom. Translated, it can mean one small step can make a great difference, a small error can lead to a serious result. Chapter 258, Bao Yi explaining. Zhuai Mo looked dumbly at the 1,100 Xiaoxia in front of him, his face slightly ugly. Seeing the signs, Wei Ran exchanged a greeting with Zhuai Mo before decisively turning and leaving, disappearing in an instant. 1,100 Xiaoxia. They look very tasty, but in reality, they were a great problem. These people were docile right now, but if they had the chance, they would not be so. Why were the people under Gong Sun Cha's command so obedient? Because Zhuai Mo had put down Jinji in their bodies. Using an aura of domination, and causing the surroundings to swear fealty to you was just a joke. Any person who entered an unfamiliar power, especially as a captive, how could they so easily accept it in their hearts? Zhuai Mo didn't even dare to be certain about the group that Gong Sun Cha had. If they left Little Mountain Jia, how many would be willing to stay? Zhuai Mo was too lazy to think of things like loyalty. In such turbulent times, that was nothing. His demands were very simple: listen to orders and don't make trouble. After breaking through Little Mountain Jia, everyone can pat their own butts and go off. However, even listening to orders and refraining from making trouble were not simple to do. Before, he had used Jinji to guarantee this, but even a Jindan would die from exhaustion if he had to put Jinji in 1,100 Xiaoxia. That method wouldn't work here. Fortunately, all of the talismans and flying swords had been clean off this group. They definitely wouldn't make trouble in the short term. Zuemo had had enough time to think of ways to resolve the problem. He first picked the Xianxia that were skilled in forging from the group and sent them to Ji Wei and Sun Bao. There were quite a few, almost 300 people. Of course, the great majority of them only had a rough understanding of forging. There were less than 40 that were truly skilled. To Ji Wei and Sun Bao, who were tight on manpower, they took all 300 people and more. Even rough work needed people to do it. Quickly, Zuemo found that the two were very good managers. No one made trouble, and no one slacked off. Everyone was furiously working. This puzzled Zuemo. Coincidentally, Bao Yi had come to find Zuemo to get more people. He was the quartermaster and store's keeper, and didn't have the time to do everything. Seeing that there were so many people here, he had ran over to ask for some. Zuemo asked him the question that had puzzled him. He could not understand it. Ji Wei and Sun Bao didn't have the ability to place Jinji, but those 300 Xianxia were obedient in their hands. Hearing this, Bao Yi smiled. "Boss, this problem is easy. Here, I give him a wave, and he comes to work. If he doesn't do well, then I'll fire him." Then he snickered, "But it's even easier for us. We can punish anyone that doesn't listen." Seeing Zuemo still filled with puzzlement, Bao Yi's mind jumped at the rare chance to show his face in front of Zuemo and patiently explained, "Boss, don't look at just how many people they have. Haha, in reality, they are helpless in front of us. First, they are afraid. Why are they afraid? Their little lives are in our hands. If we order them to do something, they don't dare to leave it incomplete. Not every boss is as patient as you, boss, or as benevolent." He didn't forget to slightly flatter Zuemo, and continued, "First, we have to set the rules down, what they can do and what they can't. If rebellious ones come out, we erase them. In the short term, they won't dare to make trouble. After a while, we can pick obedient ones from them, and give them some sweets, like a team leader or something, so they will manage for us. These people that directly receive benefits will be directly connected to boss aims, and definitely will put their all in." Zuemo was thoughtful. Bao Yi smacked his lips. Actually, with how generous boss is, the great majority aren't willing to make trouble. Those with ambition and talent chase greater stages of cultivation. They can see clearly that they aren't disadvantaged under boss's hands. Most of the people just want a pretty good life. We only have to guard against the few that have other aims. These people don't have any skill, but think they are extraordinary, and don't want to follow others. They are like shit. We shouldn't waste words with them, just chop them." Bao Yi's words enlightened Zuemo. He had become too used to living by himself, and had never managed this many people. It was also his first time doing such a thing. After Bao Yi finished picking workers, Zuemo called over the 2 platoons of Xianxia that had remained to guard the camp. He announced strict rules with quite a few, execution without exception. The 2 platoons stared at each other as they listened. Boss was very scary when he really got serious. Then Zuemo ordered the remaining 700 or so people to train under the 2 platoons. The high quantity of training made everyone's faces change. Even the 2 platoons that were responsible for teaching had ashy faces. Zuemo's thinking was very simple. Wasn't it that he was afraid they would cause trouble? Then he would make an extremely arduous training plan. He didn't believe there was anyone that would have any other thoughts after they completed such a laborious training plan every day. As expected, after furiously training every day, the only thing that the Xianxia all did after finishing was to collapse and sleep. The 2 platoons in charge were also exhausted. To guarantee normal alertness and safety, they had to take shifts. The only thing that did not change were the 3 golden armor guards that were quietly floating in the sky above the camp. Every gaze sent towards the golden armor guards were filled with fear. There were already a few troublemakers that had been chopped in half by the golden armor guard's exaggeratedly large broadswords. The ease had shocked every Xianxia who had wavered. Zuemo saw the situation was progressing well, and turned back to immerse himself in building the city. His new body was greatly improved. He was very satisfied with the power of the sky glass wave, and full of excitement towards building the city. In the sea of consciousness, Pu Yao was slightly dumbstruck. He had assumed that building the city would torture Zuemo to the point of death, but seeing the mania on Zuemo's face, he suddenly realized he had underestimated Zuemo. Under this guy's normal appearance was a heart that was just as perverse as his. Sky Star Peak seemed to resume its busyness, everything was on the right path. "Big brother, where are we going?" Jiang Hao asked with puzzlement. Big brother had gathered everyone up together, and traveled quickly and carefully, not leaving one person behind to hold the fort. "You'll know when we get there." Jiang Wei, who was innately cautious, did not even tell his own blood brother. He wanted that Sun City. Jiang Hao was slightly discontent. "Big brother, you can't even trust me." Seeing the dissatisfaction on his little brother's face, Jiang Wei thought since they were getting close, it didn't matter if the secret got out. After narrating what had happened before, he showed the Jade Scroll to Jiang Hao. When Jiang Hao read the Jade Scroll, he instantly sunk into extreme excitement. "Brother, this city is great. It's 100 times better than our mountain camp." Jiang Wei's thoughts were more attentive. The majority of their forces have gone out. It is their most unguarded time. If we use the chance to take down the city, even if their primary force comes back, they can't do anything to us. That city might be small, but it definitely hard to conquer, easy to guard and hard to attack. How much farther? I can't wait. Jiang Hao rubbed his hands as he said. Almost there. Jiang Wei then said, "Tell everyone to be careful and conceal their figures. If we encounter other Xianxia, take all of them down." "Ha, no problem." Jiang Hao excitedly rushed out with the order. After flying for a half day, they finally entered Sky Star Mountain Range. Sky Star Peak was in their sight. Everyone sighed with amazement at the little city under the sunlight. When they learned that their target this time was this little city, the mood instantly became excited, everyone's blood rushing. The experienced Jiang Wei waved a hand. "Set up camp. Everyone, have a good rest, we'll try to take them down in one encounter." Seeing the other people immerse themselves in meditation, Jiang Wei beckoned over Jiang Hao and said in a low voice, "Take some people with you and inspect the surroundings." There was so many days between now and before, we don't want anything unexpected. Jiang Hao said unconcernedly, "Big brother, you are too careful. We have 500 people, all of them experts. We aren't afraid of them." Jiang Wei's face darkened. "Don't say things like this in the future. This group is of mysterious origins. Even if there isn't many people, but they are much stronger than us. If it wasn't that they didn't have many people right now, I wouldn't dare to target this city. Be careful, don't lose your life." Jiang Hao was extremely obedient of his big brother. He muttered inside, but still complied, running to find several Xianxia that were skilled in concealment to go scout with him. His personality might be rough, but he was very good at traveling stealthily. The 100 Ghost Night Travel Scripture that he cultivated was a 5th grade scripture. It was a pity that the version he obtained was not complete. There were many parts that were lost. But even so, it was much stronger than normal 4th grade scriptures. His body shifted, and turned into a shadow. A pair of eyes that lacked any life appeared in the shadow. The other people also changed. Some became wild cats, others night eagles, all kinds of shapes. Everyone cooperated well. After changing, they spread out, all of them traveling towards Sky Star Peak. Zuemo finally finished the first formation battle watchtower. This formation battle watchtower was constructed of hundreds of formations. It was much better than normal formation battle watchtowers. From the beginning plans, to the construction, he had completed all of it. No one understood better than he did what he needed. Yuan Jiang looked entranced at the lonely formation battle watchtower. The formation battle watchtower was 15 zhang high, a section higher than the city walls. The entire watchtower was made up of blue-gold bricks. From a technical standpoint, the entire watchtower was just a formation, or rather, an extremely complete miniature interlocked formation belt. Yuan Jiang could not understand many of the parts. This little interlocked formation belt was different than any other formation he had seen before. Was Boss at the level he could set up and match formations? Boss was just this old. However, after personally seeing so many exceptional qualities of Boss, he had started to become numb. Normal, would someone normal become a boss? He could only comfort himself so. Boss, this is a lightning formation, to show that he was not so ignorant, Yuan Jiang pretended and said. It's a hard thunder formation. Hard thunder. Yuan Jiang shook, that wasn't lightning, that was hard lightning. He forced himself to calm, can we try it out? I was just going to. Suemo didn't raise his head, inserting Jingshi in. Right now, we can only use Jingshi. In the future, he didn't say the remaining. Yuan Jiang did not notice it. Where to hit? Suemo looked around after putting in the Jingshi. Yuan Jiang suddenly saw a black dot in the sky. It was an eagle. He didn't hesitate to point at the eagle and say, there is an eagle there. Okay. Suemo also became motivated, and instantly activated the formation. The inner walls, ceiling, and floor of the watchtower that were filled with formations quickly lit up with a warm silver light. Chapter 259, Meteor Void Fire. A hard lightning bomb floated in front of Suemo. Without any visible action from him, with only a streak of silver lingering in his vision, the hard lightning seemed to disappear into the air. There was no earth-shaking roar, no oppressive presence. It was fast, so fast that Yuan Jiang didn't have the time to react. When he finally caught up, he hurriedly turned his head. The sky was empty. Nothing had been left. There was no explosion of blood and limbs, no smoke from being burned at high temperatures. The sky was light and clear as though nothing had happened. We got it? Yuan Jiang asked uncertainly. Probably, Suemo answered back just as uncertainly. The speed that the formation battle watchtower had formed the hard lightning was faster than he expected. He had almost made a fool of himself. Just as he had locked onto the target, the hard lightning had flown out. The two people looked around for a while and made sure they couldn't find that eagle before confirming that it really had been killed. It seems that they will need to practice, Suemo muttered. Yuan Jiang wasn't in a position to give a review. Even though Boss said it was hard lightning, but he had not felt the rumored strong presence of hard lightning. Maybe this was a weakened version of hard lightning. He felt it was possible. It was a pity that it was just an eagle. If it was a much stronger Ling beast, it would be much easier to test its true power. At this moment though, Boss formation battle watchtowers had a great advantage, speed. In the blink of an eye, a round of attack had been sent. Boss, how many people can use the hard lightning at the same time here? He decided to point out problems from a technical point of view. 10, all of them above Ningmai. On average, one hard lightning bolt will consume 5 Jing of Ling power, Suemo said. I can only reach this level now. If I can do 2 Jing of Ling power per hard lightning bolt, that would be good. 5 Jing of Ling power? Yuan Jiang jumped in fright. This formation used up this much Ling power. That was not how much Jingshi it used, but the Ling power of Xianxia. It consumed a Xianxia's Ling power to activate the formation and to control the lightning. From a professional point of view, the formation battle watchtowers that Boss had designed were placed in the ranks of failed products. Before, he had felt that the speed of the hard lightning formation battle watchtowers were at least an advantage. Looking at it now, it was a failure. The cultivation of a Ningmai first stratum was between 10 to 30 jing. Second stratum Xianxia between 30 and 90 jing. One hard lightning bolt consumed 5 jing of Ling power from a Xianxia. That meant a Xianxia at the peak of Ningmai first stratum could only shoot 6 hard lightning bolts, and a second stratum peak Xianxia could only shoot 18 hard lightning bolts. The quick attack rate of the formation battle watchtowers actually became its greatest flaw. It would only take a blink for the 6 hard lightning bolts to fly out. After the Ling power of the Xianxia was used up, the formation battle watchtower was just a watchtower. Boss, the expenditure is too scary, Yuan Jiang decided to give a professional opinion. We can completely use some formations with higher offensive power with such high Ling power expenditure. This is the strongest offensive formation that I can find. Suemo spread his hands. But our people cannot keep up. Their Ling power would be used up in a very short amount of time. After that, we will lose the ability to fight. Yuan Jiang struggled to persuade Suemo geniuses were not all powerful, he thought inside. Oh, that is a problem. Suemo mused. His eyes suddenly lit up, and he clapped his hands, saying, "Ha, that's easy to solve. We have so many people, aren't there about 700 and so over there? Everyone can take turns. We only need 10 to a shift." The more Suemo thought, the more excited he was. He said to himself, by that time, I'll get them to train hard. 10 people to a team, they will take turns. We have the black processing meditation mats, it's fast to recover Ling power. If we stagger the time, one round will follow another. That way, we can attack unlimited times. That's right, our battle strategy is to win through numbers. If one person cannot kill him, 1,000 people will do it together. Suemo gritted out the last words. Yuan Jiang gaped upon hearing this. So it could be like this. When he thought back, he felt that Boss' plan was plausible. Even though it was not so honorable, but these days, weren't people competing on their hooliganism? Other than shock, he became wary. He could not offend Boss no matter what he did. Yuan Jiang didn't know if geniuses were gangsters, but when a genius became a gangster, then they would be a great gangster. This was his newest conclusion. A slender and blinding silver light flashed across the sky. Jiang Hao, who was in ghost form, suddenly froze. He instinctively felt fear from the presence of the silver light. That was the smell of lightning. Before he could react, he suddenly raised his head. In the sky, his fellow that had shifted into an eagle had disappeared. The ghost figure was shocked. He was greatly shocked. Damn it! How had the enemy found them? What terrified him even more was that the Xianxia that had turned to the eagle seemed to have disappeared into thin air, and did not leave anything behind. That wasn't possible. That was a Ningmai second stratum Xianxia. Even though he had shifted into an eagle which prevented him from using many spells, but his real body was still Ningmai second stratum. What spell could just erase a Ningmai second stratum Xianxia without leaving a trace? None of the spells he knew of could do such a thing. At the same time, the other scouts that had also been moving forward also stopped. Had they been discovered? Everyone's heart was beating furiously. For scouts, if the enemy had their defenses prepared and they got too close, the chance they would return alive was pitifully small. The enemy clearly also had an extremely powerful and wondrous talisman, or spell. Their gazes turned to Jiang Hao. The urge to retreat came up in Jiang Hao's heart. He looked rough usually, but when he turned into the ghost figure, he was cunning and treacherous. If they keep on scouting now, he would most likely lose his life. That strange silver light definitely was his natural enemy. Just as Jiang Hao didn't know whether to advance or retreat, Jiang Wei, located not far away, was also alarmed by the hard lightning. Jiang Wei's expression was uncertain. The power inside the little city didn't seem to be as weak as he had imagined. The enemy had already found them. His thoughts were the same as Jiang Hao. He understood his plan had failed. There would be no meaning in sending out scouts now. He hurriedly summoned back his little brother. He just had this one little brother, and he cared very much for him. Dao Zi, take 100 people to see what they are made of. After some thought, he decided to probe them first. If the situation wasn't right, they could turn and run away. Unless it was the last moment, they wouldn't use their full power. This was his secret to surviving until now. All right. Dao Zi's figure was large, his face in a snarl, his beady eyes flashing with a vicious light. He was a great subordinate of Jiang Wei's. He was combative and fond of killing. When he went into a berserk rage, he never left anyone left alive. He was vicious to his enemies, and also to himself. He was vicious and did not fear death. Dao Zi quickly picked 100 people, and headed towards the little city atop Sky Star Peak. Since they had been discovered, it was not necessary to keep hidden anymore. Mo was pondering the problem of the formation battle watchtowers and did not realize that danger was nearing. He suddenly felt that a light was flashing, and raised his head. He saw a strange purple light in the eyes of the female Xiu. Before he could respond, the female Xiu suddenly flew up into the sky. Mo hurriedly stood and also flew into the sky. When he saw the 100 people coming with murderous intent, his head rang like someone hammered it. Enemy attack. Before he could respond, the female Xiu had spread out her arms like a great bird and charged at the enemy. Mo's expression changed dramatically. Danger. All of this happened extremely quickly, like a flash of lightning. When he managed to react, the female Xiu was only 500 zhang from the group. Dao Zi looked at the female Xiu coming closer and snickered, "It's a girl. Motherfuckers, no one can take this one from me." The other Xiuzha also snickered. At such a dangerous time, Mo's mind was blank. When he came back, he was already in midair. Everything in front of him slowed down. He could see the twisted smiles on the faces of these 100 Xiuzha, could see the light of their flying swords increase, could see her worn sleeves flapping in the wind. Everything in front of him seemed to blur. Those twisted and vicious faces became blurred like the mist, the killing intent behind each blurred face was like a bloodthirsty Yao beast. The blue sky seemed to have been shadowed over. There was only that figure wrapped in torn clothing, her arms spread like a large bird filled with resolve and will, the snow-white bare feet that reminded Mo of the most perfect porcelain. He looked dazedly. What was in front of him was so slow that Mo could see so clearly. For some unknown reason, it was like a cord in his head had been plucked. Mo's eyes suddenly turned red, the desire for battle was like a rampaging wave of lava, like the flood bursting the dam, and took over his body in an instant, burning his body with pain. Kill! The deep howl sounded out like that of an ancient savage beast. All the Ling power in his body was channeled to the extreme, light suddenly exploding on his naked upper body. His skin became even more transparent like black jade, so much that it was possible to see threads of black energy that were continuously swimming under his skin. He suddenly leaped into the air. In the blink of an eye, he had flown up 100 zhang. His figure abruptly flipped upside down, and his legs pushed against the empty air. Pia! It was clearly void of any objects, but it was as though his feet had pushed against some invisible object and he shot off, full of force. Mo's figure changed directions and shot downwards, charging at the group of Xiuzha with all his might. The chaotic turbulence boomed in his ears. His speed suddenly broke past his usual limits. The explosion completely separated him from the outside world. Every part of his body was trembling in either fear or excitement. Hiss hiss hiss. In the chaotic air flowing around his body, a hint of red suddenly appeared. Fire. It was fire. Zhuomo's consciousness was like an invisible hand stimulating these tiny fire snakes. In the blink of an eye, the fire exploded. The chaotic air flows in the surroundings were like dry firewood. Countless fire snakes appeared and swam restlessly in the turbulent air flowing around Zhuomo's body. In the air, the blinding firelight, and the deep sound of an explosion caused Dao Zi and the others to shift their attention to the fireball dropping from the sky. Dao Zi's expression suddenly changed, quick, spread out. Immediately after, everyone's expressions changed. The air around them seemed to solidify. Their bodies were tightly held by an invisible suction force. Meteor void fire. Motherfucking, with the booms from the explosions, dragging a long and blinding tail of fire, Zhuomo was like a divine being smashing down with the force of 30,000 caddies. Chapter 260, The terrifying female show. The Xianxia that were at the front had already prepared their Ling shields, while the Ling armor on their bodies glowing prettily with light. However, these lights which usually gave them a sense of safety, now clearly reflected the terror on their faces. Many people couldn't help but raise their faces. With their extremely shaky vision, a fireball suddenly magnified and appeared in front of them in an instant. Boom! Zhuomo heavily smashed into this crowd of people. The three people at the very front were like stone balls that had been swatted up. Before they could even grunt, they were nailed into the soil. Under this kind of blow, no Xianxia except those who practiced body cultivation could survive. The Ling shields produced by the Ling armor were like thin paper, torn to pieces by the knife-like air flows. Zhuomo didn't feel well after the powerful impact. The flame around him instantly collapsed. At the same time, he sprayed out a ball of bloody mist. When the bloody mist landed on the red flames, the flames suddenly erupted. Some Xianxia who didn't dodge in time were swept by the exploding flames, and their expression changed. Void fire. The deadly void fire. Zhuomo did not understand the power of his move, but there were a few in this group that recognized it. Meteor void fire. Other than its presence, which was as unstoppable as a meteor, half of its power was based on the void fire. Void fire was an extremely special kind of flame. It was born through the turbulence of air, as though it came from nowhere. Void fire was extremely hard to extinguish, especially since water elemental power was ineffective. Its other quality was it was extremely strong. The temperature was not high, but it could corrode the minds of people. The blood that Zhuomo had sprayed out contained the essence of his own body. The blood caused the flame to grow, and 7 or 8 Xianxia instantly were affected. A wound in the spirit was very painful. Several people instantly howled out. Not having used up all his power, Zhuomo penetrated through the ranks of this group, and charged at the ground. After such a fierce impact, the burning blood slowly cooled down. Zhuomo suddenly woke up. When he saw the surrounding situation, his scalp instantly tingled, and he felt bitter. This was dangerous. Was he crazy? Why had he just charged out? His expression was pale as he muttered unconsciously. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the quickly approaching ground and hurriedly adjusted his body. Dong! He hit the ground and was rooted in an extremely sorry position. Once he hit the ground, he plucked up his legs and started to run. What had just happened was like a dream. The only thing he was clear about was that charge that he had accidentally made was quite good, but the consumption of Ling power and consciousness was very high, both of them reaching a dangerously low level. If he didn't run now, what was he waiting for? The results of his body cultivation recently final showed their effects. Without the support of his Ling power, he actually ran faster on two legs faster than he could fly. Also, his grandiose meteor void fire attack that he just did had shocked everyone. No one dared to chase him. After panting and running for a while, Xuemo saw that no one was chasing him and finally stopped to catch his breath. That impact just now had also wounded him significantly. His entire skeleton felt like it was going to fracture all over. Why did he just charge over? It was an evil spell, it must have been an evil spell. Xuemo furiously thought about this question. It must have been that the female Xiao had cast some evil spell on him. Otherwise, he definitely wouldn't have charged out. How could he do something like this, charging into the maws of death? There was a problem. There definitely was a problem. Panting heavily, he saw no one chasing over, especially when he saw the 3 golden armor guards and a platoon captain coming over with other people. Seeing that Xuemo was alright, the platoon leader sighed in relief. "Boss, you are alright. The other platoon is recovering Ling power, and will come here soon." Xuemo waved his hand, his other hand braced on his knee as he panted, "I'm fine, you guys go help that reckless woman." "Yes." The platoon leader responded. Just as he raised his head, he froze on his spot. "Boss," Xuemo found it strange hearing the platoon leader speak as though he was talking in a dream. When he raised his head, he saw the platoon captain's face filled with strangeness, dazedly looking behind him. He hurriedly turned over and followed the platoon captain's gaze before he also froze. In the sky, the female Xiao was like a ghost that had no weight, lightly wandering around the enemy ranks. Her speed was not fast, her motions were not sharp, and there was no light of Ling power. But everywhere she passed, the enemy would drop like a dumpling into the pot, and then smashing into ground meat against the dirt. It was evil. A coldness sudden rose in Xuemo's heart. That was too evil. What spell was that? What scripture? In this little while, there was only 30-something Xiuzha left scattered in the sky. Gulp. Xuemo's complexion was pale without any blood as he instinctively swallowed. The scene in front of him had no pressure and blinding light, no keen sword essence, no booming explosions, there was nothing. Her feet bare, she confidently passed between the people. The vicious Xiuzha dropped in front of her like sandbags, one by one. That pair of bare feet that Xuemo had sighed secretly over countless times, at this moment were giving off a dense deathly energy. The bone-aching coldness made Xuemo feel as though his bones had also froze. He was like a statue, standing there with his mouth open. Beside him, the other Xiuzha didn't dare to breath and terror filled their faces. This was the strangest and most terrifying scene that Xuemo had ever seen since he could remember. Even they felt fear, so those Xiuzha that were on the receiving end, what kind of terror did they feel? Dao Zi, whose face had been filled with viciousness just a moment ago, seemed to have seen a ghost, his facial muscles continuously trembling. He turned and wanted to flee, but he felt he couldn't move, not even a finger. Time seemed to have frozen at this moment. The Xiuzha were all stuck in the air, unable to move like puppets. That exquisite pair of porcelain bare feet would pass beside a person, and that person would drop from the sky. In the blink of an eye, in the enormous battlefield of the sky, there was no one left except the female Xiao. A deathly silence. The wind blew past. The female Xiao silently floated in the air. The sound of teeth chattering entered Xuemo's ears. He turned around his face, and saw all the Xiuzha beside him were trembling and their teeth chattering. Xuemo had originally been feeling cold all over, his heart beating furiously. However, when he saw everyone's state, the terror in his heart suddenly became fainter. Jiang Wei and Jiang Hao's face were ashen, their bodies uncontrollably trembling. The Xiuzha beside him were the same. The female Xiao suddenly turned her face, and looked towards them. Ah! A yell filled with terror suddenly sounded in everyone's ears. A Xiuzha's face was twisted, his eyes bulging out, several streams of blood coming out of his nostrils and mouth. He froze in this position as he softly fell on the ground. That shriek had almost caused Jiang Wei's heart to stop beating. He just wanted to swear, but when he saw the person's state his heart was even more shocked. This subordinate had followed him for a long time, and had seen many kinds of situations. Today, he was actually scared to death. When he saw the other people, he knew if he ordered them to keep fighting, he would be the first person cut down. He glanced with terror at the strange woman that was wearing a mask and looked like a clown. He knew that he would never forget this strange figure in his entire life. Run! He suppressed the furious beating of his heart, and channeled the power to shout and wake everyone up. He turned and ran first. The other people were also frightened, their faces paling. Like birds alarmed, they turned to flee. The female Xiao did not pursue them, and only watched in silence. Under her pair of heart-shocking and soul-shaking bare feet were 100 corpses. Zuomo didn't even know how he had returned to the city at the end. His mind was blank. The shock and blow left by that last scene had been too much for him. It wasn't just him. All the Xiozha of the city seemed to have lost their souls. They had personally seen the female Xiao's strange and unpredictable fighting. No one dared to raise their heads to look at the female Xiao, or to meet her gaze. Just like normal, the female Xiao stood silently near Zuomo. In the sea of consciousness, Pu Yao's face was serious in front of Zuomo. This was the first time Zuomo had seen Pu Yao so serious. What spell is that? Zuomo's tone was raw. Don't know. Pu Yao clearly had been frightened by the female Xiao as well. He said in a deep tone, I cannot think of any spell or secret method that is related. When I inspected her body, I found a strange power inside her body. Her body is clearly almost on the verge of collapse, it's packed with old wounds. Zuomo thought for a moment and said, hoping to give Pu Yao some clues. If it is like that, it should be a kind of self-harm spell or secret method. These types of spells and secret methods are powerful, but they shorten the lifespan, Pu Yao said seriously. You have to be careful. Her origins are not simple. Careful, Zuomo's face was more bitter than a bitter melon as he spread his hands. How can I be careful? Pu Yao didn't know what to say either. His complexion was not any better than Zuomo. Meeting a person whose origins he did not know, and was not matched for, made him feel defeat as one who had once been a Sky Yao. I wonder if we can ask her to help against Clear Sky Old Forefather. Zuomo suddenly said. She's too young. Pu Yao shook his head. Even if it is a self-harm spell, the time she has spent on cultivation is too short. She may be strong, but not comparable to Jin Dan. She can deal with Ningmai like chopping vegetables, but against Jin Dan, that's a different matter. Jin Dan and Ningmai is not a difference in the kind of power, but the difference in essence of power. Pu Yao continued, the difference of the essence is not something that can be overcome with other methods. Zuomo found it was right after he thought about it. Tell me, did she use some kind of mental confusion spell? Zuomo suddenly asked, why did I just charge out? I shouldn't have. I remember there was a purple light in her eyes. She definitely didn't use one. I'm clear about that. Pu Yao's answer was very confident, but then his voice was also filled with puzzlement, but I'm puzzled too. How come you just charged out? You are the one most scared of death. I feel the same. Zuomo did not feel embarrassed and nodded his head. She didn't give me any jingsha, why did I charge out? It is so evil. She isn't beautiful. If she was a beauty, Pu Yao pondered as he rubbed his chin. Beauty? Zuomo glared, and instinctively raised his volume. If there is no jingsha, even beauties don't work. Then why? Pu Yao couldn't understand. Why? Zuomo's brows furrowed, his face full of distress. This question was so strange, so confusing. If he couldn't resolve it, he wouldn't feel safe. If he went out like this again without knowing why, he might lose his little life. Just as Mo was worried about this, inside a little quiet mountain cave not far away from Nanxing village, Ma Fan and Xia Shan opened their eyes at the same time. Chapter 261, Ambush. The cave was so dark that they couldn't see their own fingers. There was only a burst of sound as they moved out. They were doing their final inspections and preparations. It was abnormally silent as no one spoke. After a while, the preparations were finished, and killing intent silently spreading through as the mountain cave fell back into silence. Depart, Ma Fan spat out the word shortly. The procession swam out. Exiting the cave, the fresh air rushed onto their faces. Everyone couldn't help but show intoxicated expressions, but they quickly recovered their calmness. No one spoke. Even Lei Peng, who usually chatted on, was abnormally silent at this time. Everyone simultaneously flew into the air. After fighting so many hard battles together, the cooperation between the troops had matured. More than 300 people were floating in the air. The scattered troops exuded killing intent like a bow that was slowly being drawn. They didn't find any scouts in the sky. Ma Fan and Xia Shan looked at each other and saw the joy in the other's eyes. After resting for 5 days, everyone was full of energy in Ling power. The desire for battle that they had suppressed for so long was like a tiger breaking out of its cage and was unable to be stopped. Our target, Nanxing village. Ma Fan crisply gave the order and moved first. The entire troop simultaneously moved to action from silence. There was no hesitation, no disguise or trying to conserve energy. The flight speed of the troop was pushed to their limits as they headed straight towards Nanxing village. The scouts they encountered along the way stared with shock at this unfamiliar troop that had appeared out of nowhere. Ma Fan's procession did not tangle with the scouts at all, brimming with killing intent as they flashed by the scouts. The sound of wind howling in their ears, the wind blew on their faces like knives, and the scenery that flashed quickly under their feet caused the killing intent of these people to increase. In their eyes, Nanxing village was a weak beautiful woman that was half naked and could not resist at all. Their lives were content after having such an experience. As Nanxing village appeared in their vision, everyone's battle intent rose to the peak. Even a person as indifferent as Ma Fan felt as though his blood was ignited. Raising his flying sword high, he angrily shouted, "Kill! Kill!" Everyone raised their swords and sabers, booming in their reply that shook the landscape. The troop that appeared to be one being suddenly dismembered itself in the air and divided into 14 groups. Like 14 snakes, they revealed their sharp fangs and leapt down at Nanxing village. Ma Fan and Xia Shan each led a platoon as they charged at the very front. The two did not make any adjustments or detours, their bodies weighing down as they charged side by side. 2 ruler straight air ripples drew through the air. The two troops were like arrows that left the bow as they shot towards the newly rebuilt village gates. The brand new village gates were like fragile cardboard, instantly torn to countless pieces that scattered in all directions. The two troops were not hampered in their speed, quickly passing through the ruler straight streets of Nanxing village. The sword energies crisscrossed. The high-speed dive greatly increased the power of the sword energies. The keen sword energies were even more unstoppable at this time. The buildings on the two sides of the main street were ground into dust. The Xianxia that jumped out all paled as they panicked. Facing such ferocious and insane sword essences, many Xianxia's awareness were stolen, and they lost their urge to fight. Pew pew pew. They were a destructive force, everywhere they passed innumerable bursts of blood rose. Amidst the loud roaring, the wails were not able to be heard. Boom! Ma Fan encountered the first resistance. A Xianxia gave a muffled grunt but took advantage of the sword energy's power to bounce in another direction. Ma Fan was slightly startled. This was an expert. Even he wasn't certain if he could escape under a charge like this own. This person should be a third stratum Shouja. However, he ignored the other. One or two Shouja would not dare to resist against a charge constructed like so. Even more, their morale and energy were at the best state right now. The 14 platoons were like 14 domineering and sharp sword energies flashing by in the blink of an eye. Nanxing village collapsed into pieces. Elder. Run. A pale guard pulled Xiang and quickly burrowed into the ground. There was a transportation formation in the secret room underground. Just as they burrowed into the underground room, the building on the surface broke down. The light flashed on the transportation formations and no one was left in the room. There was no need to communicate. Everyone was high on killing. Ma Fan's procession was extremely smart. They did not have targets, they just charged. They did not pursue the Shouja that escaped the first charge, they focused on furiously damaging Nanxing village. In a short amount of time, Nanxing village turned into ruins. They themselves were not wounded at all. Those who were leading were all those that comprehended sword essence. All the Shouja, when they faced this many attacks, all lost their courage and escaped as far as they could. After charging a few times, everyone had to stop. "There's no one alive," Xia Shan said with helplessness. He had been in a rhythm, and couldn't help but complain inside that Nanxing village really didn't have enough to kill. However, he also knew that if Nanxing village wasn't so weak, he wouldn't have come no matter what. Ma Fan made a sound of acknowledgement. "Everyone, rest. Let's see if there is anything we can take." "Ha, unlikes doing this." Lei Ping grinned as he said. However, everyone's faces were ugly as they quickly gathered together again. Which motherfucker told him the outer hall was rich? Lei Ping's face was as black as the bottom of the pot as he angrily swore, and has never seen a place as poor as this. It's clean. It's so motherfucking clean. Unprofitable, so unprofitable. The faces of the other people were not much better. They had searched all of Nanxing village. Other than some still usable talismans and other things they could find on the bodies of the Shouja they had killed, they actually hadn't found anything else of value. This was Nanxing village, the main camp of the outer hall. How could it be so poor? Just at this moment, a subordinate flew over. Darren. There's a camp nearby in the west." Everyone that hadn't found everything suddenly lit up. Was the storeroom over there? They did not hesitate to fly towards the camp. As they landed, they were full of anticipation. When they saw the entire camp filled with people who had fearful expressions on their faces, and had cultivations just in Lianqi, their expressions became extremely ugly again. Even Ma Fan, who had personally made the plan this time, didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Xiu slaves. This entire camp was all Xiu slaves. Looking out, there probably were thousands of them. All of these Xiu slaves had Lianqi cultivation and were not of great use. The Shouja that had been guarding the camp had escaped a long time ago. Ma Fan and the others had thought incorrectly. Even though Xiang and the factions had been discussing business, but they hadn't transported any merchandise over. What they discussed were large orders, and transactions that would be completed in intervals. As a result, other than these Xiu slaves, Nanxing village really didn't have anything else. Both Ma Fan and Xia Shan were very unfamiliar with doing business, so they couldn't ever have predicted the proceedings. They had rationally assumed that the stores of Nanxing village were bursting with mountains of resources. It had to be said that the merit rewards in the camp were also connected to their service and the spoils that they had contributed each time. They looked down on what they could hand over, that could be used to trade for good things from Boss. Boss had a lot of good things in his possession. They had been envious for a long time. Who could have thought that their plan would fail? Everyone's mood suddenly dropped to the bottom after having just achieving a victory. How about we take these Xiu slaves, someone weakly suggested. What do we need show slaves for? Also, how can we transport so many people, someone objected. There's slave transportation boats here. Their speed isn't slow and it's convenient for transporting people, another person quickly suggested. If we take a few boats of show slaves back, and also Lianxi-level show slaves, wouldn't we be laughed at when we get back? But we can't leave them to benefit the outer hall. Then should we kill all of them? I won't do it. I can't do something like massacring show slaves. Many Xiuzha nodded their heads in agreement with those words. They were all Xiuzha who had experienced many battles. All of them had blood on their hands. They felt it was normal to fight to the death. However, everyone still felt it was objectionable to massacre show slaves that were not able to put up any resistance. Of course, that, can't leave them to benefit the outer hall, struck their hearts even more. To say nothing of having gained nothing, no one was willing to let the outer hall have the slaves. After such an attack, the two sides definitely had no room to negotiate. The people of the outer hall would hate them to their bones. Take them, all of them. Ma Fan gritted his teeth, who cares if they are useful or not? Wait until we return first. The Xiu slaves in the camp were herded onto the Xiu slave boats. Everyone also stepped onto the slave transporting boats. The slave transporting boats were Jingshi talismans. They were extremely large, about 50 zhang long and shaped like a turtle with no sails. They could hold more than 1,000 Xiu slaves. Xiu slaves were not rare. They were mostly the natives of newly discovered Jie. Some of the natives were very primitive, others had already stepped upon the path to cultivation. However, they were powerless against those great Xiuzha sects and had all become Xiu slaves. Many sects were enthusiastic about discovering new Jie. Jingshi and ores were things they needed desperately. If they could become the Jie master, they would become the literal emperor of that place. If they did not like doing so, they could sell the new Jie they possessed to other sects and receive large amounts of resources. Searching for Jie was a high-risk and high-return profession. After the natives were captured, the sect would pass some basic scriptures to them. Xiu slaves that entered Lianxi could be bought and sold in the market. This kind of Xiu slaves could do heavy labor like mining. Those Xiu slaves who had exceptional talents would be marked with high prices to be sold to other sects to be slave soldiers. Slave soldiers would be taught more profound scriptures but, without exception, have Jinji put into them so that they absolutely would not dare to refuse the orders of the sect. Those sects who had long histories had even longer histories of bringing up slave soldiers. They would even have special slave soldier troops. Slave transporting boats were specialized slave transporting talismans. They were extremely large and could contain large amounts of Xiu slaves. The body of the boats were also extremely hard because they needed to travel between Jie and pass through the turbulence of the void. Due to that, slave transporting boats were never below 5th grade. In terms of spoils of victory this time, their biggest one was these 5 slave transporting boats. The outer hall had transported 5 boats of Xiu slaves. They had already sold 4 boatloads of slaves, so there was 1 boatload of Xiu slaves left. Naturally, Ma Fan and the others wouldn't leave the other 4 boats behind. Luckily, the boats could be shrunk when they were not in use. The miniaturized slave transporting boats were about 3 chi large, and was very exquisite. Ma Fan and the others found it extremely puzzling that the slaves hadn't run away on the ships. What they didn't know was that the camp was very close to Nanxing village, so the outer hall didn't worry at all that the Xiu slaves would dare to run. The camp was usually guarded very loosely. The people who were supposed to be guarding the slaves today had coincidentally gone to Nanxing village to have fun, and had not escaped the calamity. It was the first time many of the people had stepped onto a slave transporting boat. All of them were very curious and looked around. Some of the people who had experience on the boats moved of their own initiative to steer the big boat. The slave transporting boat slowly floated into the sky. Many people sighed with amazement at the 50 zhang boat. Everyone snickered and steered the ship into the distance with spirit. Chapter 262, Unprofitable Business on the Mountaintop. Xiang looked at the ruined Nanxing village, paused for a moment, and then broke down sobbing. Zuomo looked with slight fear at the female Xiao nearby. She seemed to have resumed her past state of motionlessness. After yesterday's battle, the female Xiao was much more sinister from every angle in his eyes. This made him slightly insecure. He would treasure his life and stay far from female Xiao. Especially strong females that knew evil spells. He had discussed with Pu Yao for a while yesterday and hadn't concluded anything. He still needed to work, so after resting for a night, he continued to build formation battle watchtowers. After such a battle, the captives in the camp were as obedient as they could be. However, the issue that arose was that no one dared to go within 3 zhang of Zuomo. Zuomo originally had a question to ask Yuan Zhang. But when he walked 2 steps towards the other, he saw Yuan Zhang's face paled and his legs were trembling. Zuomo suddenly remembered that some of the enemies had been scared to death by the strong girl, and his steps instantly stopped. Yuan Zhang was a rare kind of genius. If he was scared to death, it would be so unprofitable. He could only stop moving. He thought of the strong girl that wouldn't leave him alone. Wasn't he now the plague that no one would approach? Zuomo's mood immediately became terrible. He waved his hand for Yuan Zhang to leave. Watching as Yuan Zhang ran away faster than a rabbit as though he was pardoned from death, his mood became increasingly terrible. However, when he recalled Pu Yao's dark expression, and undisguised rage, his mood instantly became better. As expected, happiness was always built upon other people's pain. Zuomo snickered and went back to building the city. Just as Zuomo had seen, Pu Yao's mood was extremely terrible. He felt great failure at the appearance of the female Xiao. He didn't know her history, nor the scripture she used, didn't know how her power really was, didn't know anything. Yet he also had no solution. If this was still the time when his strength had not been damaged, if he was unhappy, he could just pinch and make the person explode. But now his soul was extremely damaged. He had to act carefully and could only rely on Zuomo. Zuomo was the place he had put his soul in, and was now under threat from the female Xiao. How could Pu Yao feel safe like this? Also, he could not understand the female Xiao. This point caused the insecurity inside to grow. If something occurred, he could do nothing. His strength had reached the lowest point in his life. The female Xiao's strength wasn't just ridiculously strong, but extremely strange. It seems that we need to temporarily cooperate, Pu Yao gritted out to the gravestone. This woman is too dangerous. The gravestone didn't make a sound. Pu Yao smirked coldly. Aren't you afraid that something will happen to him? Other than him, do you have any other choice? The gravestone suddenly became as smooth and clear as a mirror, a figure blurrily appearing. Pu Yao smiled. After the first formation battle watchtower, Zuomo's construction speed increased dramatically. This was due to him acclimating to the new changes of his body. Zuomo gave the move he had randomly created that day the name of diving from heaven. Accidentally performing diving from heaven had made him realize many aspects of his new body. The most evident was the consciousness. His consciousness had not developed very much over time, as though it was stuck at a certain barrier. In the sky that day, when he had accidentally stirred the flames in the turbulent air, he had comprehended and instantly broke through in that moment. The improvement in his consciousness was enormous. This also caused his speed in building formation battle watchtowers to dramatically increase. The most difficult part of the formation battle watchtower was carving the formation. After his consciousness improved, it became easier to carve formations. Adding on that he had the experience of making one tower, his construction speed made people gape. Yuan Jiang, who was watching from a distance, increasingly felt that boss was a monster. One female and one male monster. The demand of resources suddenly increased. Ji Wei and Sun Bao instantly were so busy they were dizzy. Zhuemo furiously built at a rate of one formation battle watchtower every 2 days. Tower after tower rose up. Zhuemo used almost all of the empty ground to build formation battle watchtowers. Zhuemo had a strong feeling that the potential of his body was slowly being uncovered. All kinds of heavy labor would squeeze out every bit of strength in his body, controlling the fire paper would consume every drop of his Ling power, carving formations exhausted his spiritual power. He suddenly felt some anticipation. When this city was finished, what would he become? The anticipation and yearning of the Xiuzha in the camp increased every day. Such a strong city, adding such a dense patch of formation battle watchtowers, they thought that no one could destroy this. Just as Zhuemo was happily busy, Ma Fan and the others arrived at the camp with the enormous slave-transporting boats. Looking at the black batch of Xiu slaves, Zhuemo was at a complete loss for words. The 1,000 and more captives that Gong Sun Cha had sent back had already gave him a headache. Just after he had managed to settle them down, Ma Fan and the others had brought to him 1,000 and more of Xiu slaves, and just Lianqi Xiu slaves. Zhuemo was exceptionally angry, pointing at the Xiu slaves in front of him and asking expressionlessly, "What do I do with them?" Ma Fan, Xia Shan, and the others were very careful. They also felt that their spoils this time were somewhat absurd. Xia Shan piled a smile on his face. Xiu slaves can be used to mine. Mining? I don't believe they can do as well as Lil Pagoda, Zhuemo said with a black face. Lil Pagoda and Zhuemo were connected in mind. Hearing Zhuemo praise it, it whooshed out of somewhere and smugly twisted its slightly chubby body. However, when it saw Zhuemo's pot-black face, its figure froze and then it fled. Many incidents had told him when his daddy wasn't in a good mood, nothing good would come out of appearing in front of him. Ma Fan carefully gave a smile as he said, "Boss, you don't know how poor the outer hall is, so poor that they only have Xiu slaves. We didn't have any solution. If we came back with empty hands, that doesn't fit in with what you usually teach us." "Yes, yes." Lei Ping hurriedly agreed as he furiously nodded his head. Zhuemo smiled coldly. "Not bad, not bad. You guys really remember my words well." "Of course." Lei Ping beat loudly on his hairy chest. Xia Shan and Ma Fan exchanged a look and obediently closed their mouths. The two of them looked with sympathy at Lei Ping. "Then you can support them." Zhuemo glanced at Lei Ping. "You forgot the other phrase I said. We don't do unprofitable business." "Oh, I will take it from your rewards." Lei Ping gave a sky-shaking howl and grabbed onto Zhuemo's leg. "Boss! I was wrong. I really was wrong." The anger in Zhuemo's heart erupted as he kicked Lei Ping out 20 zhang away and swore, "You also know you are wrong." "Ha! Do you know how much jingxia you people spend every day? 5 pieces. 700 people, 3,500 pieces of third-grade jingxia every day. Do you really think GE is a tycoon? Gu is so poor right now GE almost can't eat." Everyone was scared by the acrimony in Zhuemo's words that they were shaking. They found he was right as they thought about it. They would consume large amounts of jingxia when they cultivated every day. All of the expenses were provided by boss. They had never thought about it before. Now that boss calculated it, they jumped in fright. Many people suddenly felt guilty. As long as it was jingxia for cultivation, boss was always open and had never shorted them. "Ha! Now you guys have taken back this many Xiu slaves, you just want GE to go bankrupt." Zhuemo's anger had not eased. Nothing could infuriate him more than going bankrupt. "Boss, we'll go steal Jingxia for you." Lei Ping rolled and climbed over to express his determination. "Right, boss, we can't let you lose. We'll rob them blind." The crowd of people instantly started howling. Their killing intent scared the 1,000 show slaves into paling. Then what to do with the show slaves? Sell them? Ma Fan carefully asked. Sell to whom? The anger in Zhuo Mo's heart had decreased greatly as he snorted coldly. "Wouldn't that be telling other people what you guys did Nanxing village?" Everyone stared at each other, and instantly found it was a problem. "Should we kill them?" Xia Shan hesitantly asked. The expressions of many of the surrounding people were not natural. Once the words came out, the show slaves that were nearest instantly paled and knelt down with a bang, furiously kowtowing and begging, "Darren. We can work. We're willing to do any work. Darren, we only ask for something to eat, get up. Get up." Zhuo Mo instantly had a headache. He had never seen anything like this before. Those show slaves didn't dare to get up, all of them kneeling down in a wave as they furiously kowtowed. "Darren," the already impatient Zhuo Mo suddenly raged, "all of you, shut up and get the motherfucking up. I'll kill anyone who kneels." These words were very effective at silencing everyone. Zhuo Mo didn't speak another word, turning and leaving. Ma Fan and the others that remained behind looked at each other with frowns on their faces. Those people who had suggested to take the show slaves with them were full of regret, but at this time, no one was in the mood to talk. Zhuo Mo found a formation battle watchtower in a dejected mood, and laid down. He might have many people under his command, but in reality, he still was a youth who hadn't seen much. Wukong sword sect also had show slaves. He had some sympathy for show slaves. They were a group of pitiful people. But life was not easy. His sympathy wasn't going to be used on show slaves he didn't know or related to. This group of show slaves were a great burden, but he couldn't do something like massacre all the show slaves. Usually, he was used to facing these things from an objective perspective. Who could have thought that something like this would one day occur to him? Little Mountain Jia was full of danger. Their goal was to quickly leave. Where did he have the energy to take care of this group of helpless show slaves? What Zhuo Mo needed right now was Xiaoxia with offensive power, and not show slaves that could not fight. These show slaves also needed to consume ling grains or jingxia. Even though it wouldn't be a huge amount, but due to the large numbers, it wouldn't be a small amount. The already heavy burden would grow bigger. Why had he encountered such a terrible matter? Zhuo Mo laid down with anger and no strength. Looking at the exquisite formations on the ceiling, he fell into a daze. Suddenly, Pu Yao's voice suddenly sounded in his mind, "I have a solution." Chapter 263 Zhuo Mo's determination. Hearing Pu Yao's words, Zhuo Mo's mind became alert. He pretended to accidentally glance at the female show before secretly entering the sea of consciousness. What solution? Zhuo Mo asked straightforwardly. However, when he saw Pu Yao, he stilled. Pu Yao wasn't sitting on the gravestone like he usually did but sitting in front of it. Weren't these two at odds? Suspicion flashed across Zhuo Mo's heart, but his attention was quickly attracted by Pu Yao's words. "I know what you are worried about." Pu Yao's thin lips curved in an enchanting smile. Zhuo Mo was slightly distracted by a nonsensical question in his mind. Why was everyone around him so evil and feminine? Even Gong Sun Cha seemed to be progressing towards abnormal now. The strong girl that had appeared was also very evil. Pu Yao seemed very confident. It is a pity to waste jingxia on their body. Zhuo Mo rolled his eyes upon hearing this. Just say the solution, don't waste words. He. Pu Yao wasn't moved, his bloody pupil narrowing slightly. Why don't you consider making them cultivate mo? Cultivate mo? Sui mo instantly froze. Exactly, cultivate mo, Pu Yao smiled. The Ling energy of Little Mountain Jie is corroded, but that doesn't affect mo cultivation. This group of Xiu slaves have just entered Lianqi, and their cultivation is rough. It would not be difficult for them to switch to mo cultivation. Also, cultivating mo does not require Ling energy, and you do not need to use up Jingshi. Zhuo Mo's interest was stirred by Pu Yao's suggestion. He asked with curiosity, how to cultivate mo. There are mo skills, Pu Yao said in a matter-of-fact tone. Hearing this, Zhuo Mo was furious. He jumped off the ground, pointing at Pu Yao's nose and swearing, "Ha, you do have mo skills. What did you say in the past to Ge? You said you didn't have mo skills, making Ge practice, sky wave fist scripture. Now you run out and say you have mo skills, you were fooling Ge." Pu Yao was speechless. The matter of cultivating mo was quickly finalized. Pu Yao took out a set of mo skill called Hardship Guard. The previous version of Hardship Guard was a mo skill called Hardship Abyss. It was first created by a heart-addicted monkey. He was born very weak and untalented. He could not cultivate the heart addiction mo skill of his clan. After many troubles, he personally created Hardship Abyss, and in the end, cultivated to the rank of mo general. Later, this mo skill landed in the hands of a king. He changed the Hardship Abyss, and bestowed it to one of his personal guards. This mo skill therefore changed its name to Hardship Guard. Pu Yao proudly introduced. The greatest specialty of this mo skill is that it is suitable for mo that do not have outstanding talents. Oh, this group of Xiu slaves is very well suited. Humph, in any mo jia, this mo skill is high-level stuff. It can sell for a good price. These Xiu slaves really picked up a bargain. After Zhuo Mo finished reading Hardship Guard, he jumped in fright. Unless one had great endurance they couldn't cultivate this mo skill, much less to a high level. Mo skills were based on hard work and persistence. The person that made this mo skill really was perverse. He had originally been thinking if he could cultivate it. After reading it, Zhuo Mo decided to give up. This wasn't something anyone could cultivate. Pu Yao understood Zhuo Mo's misgiving. Normal people aren't suited to cultivate this, but these Xiu slaves have encountered many obstacles and hardships in their life, so they are actually very suited to this mo skill. In any case, you just don't want them to use Jingshi right now. Zhuo Mo agreed with Pu Yao. In any case, he wasn't hoping that these Xiu slaves would accomplish anything. The Xiu slaves were reorganized into a camp called the Guard Camp. Zhuo Mo counted 1,000 people. He passed down the first chapter of Hardship Guard, and picked a few Xiuzhe to supervise them before going back to his city construction work. After a few days, when Gongsun Cha returned with 800 captives, Zhuo Mo finally released a breath. The two exchanged a few words before they attended to their own matters. Zhuo Mo had to build the city, Gongsun Cha had to organize the captives and make new groups, and consolidate what he learned, etc. The preliminary structure of the Golden Crow City caused everyone, including the captives, to feel excitement and anticipation. After continuous construction, the formation battle watchtowers of Golden Crow City reached 36 in number. They were tightly packed together, pointing towards the sky like sharp swords. Looking at these formation battle watchtowers that rose above the city walls, everyone was filled with the feeling of safety. The completion of 36 formation battle watchtowers meant that the Xiuzhe of the camp could start to move in. Wei Qingbin followed Master Ji Wei into Golden Crow City, his expression excited. As he stepped into the city, a feeling of warmth surrounded him, feeling like he was soaking in the sun. The people in the surroundings sighed in amazement. What formation is this? It is so wonderful. Comfortable, way too comfortable. Even if you kill me, I won't return to that mountain cave. Worth it, it's worth it even if I die now. Hearing the discussion around him, Wei Qingbin suddenly felt his nose was sore and almost cried. He hurriedly lowered his head to disguise his state. When he raised his head, what he saw was a flash of tears at the corner of Master Ji Wei's eye. For people like him, the Golden Crow City in front of them was the final dream in their hearts. One after the other, the formation battle watchtowers covered in complex formation scripts appeared in their vision, causing them to sigh in amazement again. Everyone's hearts was instantly comforted. The enormous group of formation battle watchtowers seemed to be announcing their power and gave them a strong feeling of safety. Alright, move quickly. Master Ji Wei bellowed at the top of his lungs to wake the group of people up. We need to go first build the places we will be living in. Otherwise, we need to return to the cave tonight. Which one of you wants to return? Of course, no one was willing, so everyone hurried to start building. The Xianxia that knew earth element spells usually were also skilled in building houses. The Xianxia of the forging division were never properly educated. Many of them had a pretty good earth element spell. Everyone work hard. Let's try to finish before dusk so we can have a little fun tonight. Master Jia Wei waved his arms with excitement. As Suimo had already divided out the different living districts beforehand, the camp was naturally the most important part. Gongsun Cha first needed to reorganize the numerous troops under his command. He didn't interfere with the guard camp. He didn't understand the things Xixiang was doing with the guard camp. Just the Xianxia under his command were enough to give him a headache. He didn't want to break down the organization of the 6 divisions. These Xianxia cooperated very well among themselves. If new people were added, their offensive capabilities would decrease. However, Gongsun Cha was not the same greenhorn that didn't understand anything anymore. He easily worked to reorganize. The 6 divisions were the primary force, and were under the command of Vermilion Bird Camp. The fact that the first camp created was called Vermilion Bird Camp, and not Black Warrior Camp, 1, was enough to express how much everyone liked Golden Crow City from the bottom of their hearts. The Xianxia that had comprehended essence and were led by Ma Fan and Xie Shan were put into one platoon, Sky Peak Platoon. What was a surprise was the Shield Guard Platoon was led by Zhong Ru. The main purpose of the Shield Guard Platoon was to protect Gongsun Cha, and transmit Gongsun Cha's orders. The remaining 2,000 Xianxia were divided into the eastern and western camps. In Gongsun Cha's plans, Eastern Camp and Western Camp were the reserve that would provide talented Xianxia for Vermilion Bird Camp. In Gongsun Cha's vision, Vermilion Camp would have 12 divisions, 1,664 people. Adding on the quartermasters and supporting Xianxia, it would be a full 1,500 people. There were just 6 divisions now, so it was only half complete. But he was also clear that Vermilion Bird Camp, which was skilled in ambushing, was not in great demand since they possessed the Golden Crow City. The most pressing matter at the moment was to train the Xianxia of the eastern and western camps to use the formation battle watchtowers. The reorganization calmly progressed. As to the guard camp, that was Xixiang's headache. Having finished his preparations, Gongsun Cha quickly moved into the Golden Crow City. When the night came, Golden Crow City was very loud. The lanterns at the sides of the street filled the little city with brightness. From afar, it looked like a city that was floating in the air. Today was a holiday for everyone in the city. Many people cried from happiness. They finally had a place to rest, a place to shelter them from the elements, they finally had a place where they could relax and sleep. In the calamity-ridden little mountain Jia, Golden Crow City was one of a kind. Gongsun Cha silently watched his subordinates celebrate. Those people that usually weren't afraid of death were sobbing like children at the moment. His heart didn't feel so good. He knew more. He knew the city was just to prepare for the big battle against the Clear Sky Old Forefather. From the moment it started to be built, the fate of Golden Crow City was set in stone. He pressed together his lips, quietly leaving the partying camp to find Xixiang. He found Xixiang at a formation battle watchtower. He was slightly shocked. As everyone was partying madly, Xixiang was staying by himself at the formation battle watchtower. Noticing Gongsun Cha come over, Suemo raised his head. I'm trying to see if I can use the formation battle watchtower to nurture the sonic lightning walnuts. Gongsun Cha became alert. Did Xixiang find something? It seems plausible, but I still need to test it. Suemo noticed Gongsun Cha's low mood. What? Has Shidi encountered something unhappy? He understood the two Shidi very well. Qing Shidi was a person obsessed with animal keeping. While Gongsun Shidi usually seemed vicious and murderous, but in reality, his mentality was not any different than Qing Shidi. They were both very naive and did not know worldly matters. I just saw they are so happy. But in the end, there will be nothing. This city is destined to be destroyed, Gongsun Cha said dejectedly. Suemo was silent. He walked to the guardrail and looked into the distance. After a moment, he smiled and said, I hadn't thought such a violent person as Shidi would be so sentimental. He paused slightly, turned his face, and said seriously, Little Mountain Jia is a cage. Can there be a paradise in a cage? What we want is to survive because we understand that if we cannot escape the cage, we will die. It is like using warm water to cook a frog, we will be cooked slowly. Among them, some understand and some do not. Those that understand are not willing to think. Why? They feel if they can live one more day, it is one day. Suemo said in a deep voice, but I don't think the same. I would rather to use those miserable days to trade for a chance to escape. Golden Crow City has never been a paradise. If we succeed, even if this city does not exist anymore, they will still be able to find their paradise. Suemo said resolutely. Gongsun Cha raised his head. The depression on his delicate face swept away cleanly. Those eyes that were usually covered in killing intent and people could never see into were so clear now there was no impurity. The two exchanged a look, and smiled at each other. 1. The vermilion bird is one of the 4 sacred/benevolent animals of Chinese culture. It is actually a 5-colored bird, not just one color. Its element is fire and the cardinal direction it represents is the south. Black warrior is another name for the black turtle. Its cardinal direction is the north, and its element is water. In mythology, the black warrior is made of 2 entities, a tortoise, and a snake who are 2 great generals. Due to the origins, Xian Wu would usually be a much better name for a military troop. Chapter 264, The rudimentary form. Taking advantage of the fact that the old forefather was in seclusion, Xiang concealed the matter. The other people also knew this matter had created too much of a mess. If it was revealed to the top, everyone would die, so they all kept their silence. Their greatest losses this time were the 5 slave transporting boats. The value of the 1,000 Xiu slaves was very limited. They were still able to afford the compensation for 5 slave transporting boats. Yet, the loss that made them want to spit blood was that many of the bosses that they had finished negotiating with had died in this ambush. The agreements that they had made had become a waste of effort. These factions would enter a period of chaos, reform, and choose a new leader. This meant that their work would drag on for a longer period of time. This damned group of hooligans. If he caught them, he would definitely tear their bodies to pieces. Xiang gritted his teeth. Thinking of the factions that were in chaos, he felt his head ache. He suddenly found that from the time he had become the chief elder of the outer hall, an unfortunate sequence of bad luck had followed him. Nothing had gone smoothly. What he needed to consider now was whether he should intervene in the internal conflict of these factions. There was not much time left for him. If he could not complete this matter before the old forefather came out of seclusion, he would lose all of his chances. All of the formation battle watchtowers lit up. The warm silver lights were very beautiful in the night. 7 sonic lightning walnuts were floating at the top level of each formation battle watchtower. They were bobbing like they were in water. They occasionally flew around the interior of the watchtowers. The ceiling and walls of the towers continued to release silver dots of light. These mist-like silver dots of light would then be absorbed by the sonic lightning walnuts. Xuemo carefully inspected every sonic lightning walnut that was being nurtured in the top level of the watchtowers. The formation battle watchtowers were carved with the Een Fiend hard lightning formation. These dots of silver mist that looked harmless contained minuscule amounts of hard lightning. After being nurtured like this, the power of the sonic lightning walnut would be even greater. The construction of the city was only half completed. The remaining half was the most difficult part. In the watchtower at the very center of the Golden Crow City, Xuemo started to dig down into the soil. He incinerated the evacuated soil using Golden Crow fire. His body had entered the second maturation. The noise of this maturation process was much less noisy than compared to the first time. The improvement of second maturation was not as evident as first maturation, but he could still clearly feel the improvement of his body. Sky Glass Wave had improved to 19 revolutions from 18 revolutions. The power had increased, but there was no qualitative change. But what interested Xuemo was the MO matrix on his body. Jade Metal Head was a MO physique. After the second maturation, a faint MO matrix started to appear. The MO matrix started first on his chest and it was very faint. If Xuemo didn't carefully inspect his body, it was likely he would have missed such a subtle change. His skin had become black and glowing. The MO matrix patterns were also black, and very faint, so they were hard to detect. Xuemo carefully studied them for a while and found the MO matrix that had floated out was not complete. Many places were far too faint and hard to decipher. He concluded that they must only completely appear after third maturation. He noted it down before going back to building the city. In the span of a few short days, Golden Crow City was completely revamped. The streets were abnormally clean. New buildings neatly spread out like a forest on both sides of streets. The style of these buildings were varied. There were green brick yards, brightly colored sharp-pointed towers. The Xianxia of Golden Crow City came from many different places. The only buildings that could not be seen here were the residences frequently seen in other cities to be floating in the air out of consideration for safety. The fruit trees on both sides of the street were tenderly green and heavy with fruit that gave off a tantalizing fragrance. All of the empty spaces like under the trees, and the corners of buildings were planted with flowers and grasses to make them attractive to the eyes. For these trees and grasses, all of the Xianxia that had knowledge of Ling farming had joined in. Many kinds of birds had been enticed over. Vitality flowed in every corner. Nian Lu, who dragged a group of Xianxia back through hurrying day and night, gaped at the beautiful scene in front of him and lost the ability of speech. Bao Yi bowed to Lil Pagoda that was floating in front of him, his expression slightly wary. Pagoda Yi, are you hungry again? The chubby Lil Pagoda tried its best to produce a proud stance, but one could not bear to look at it. Behind it, Silly Bird raised her head and pushed out her chest, her stomach tightly stretched and fat. The half-lidded eyes didn't show any intentions of properly looking at a person. On top of Silly Bird's head, the antenna of Lil Black restlessly waved as it looked around. Bao Yi didn't dare to laugh. He didn't dare to offend the 3 little ancestors in front of him. He really didn't understand. These days, could talismans, steeds, and worms become so intelligent? The 3 formed a troop and would come at intervals to sweep the stores. The weirdest one was Lil Pagoda. It would swallow anything. Talismans, materials, all of it would go to its stomach. But Boss was very lenient with them, and had told him to give the talismans that could not be used to Lil Pagoda. To a miser like Bao Yi, this was akin to carving the flesh out of his heart. Even though he knew that there wasn't much value in those talismans, but the smallest grain of rice was still food. Watching as they all landed in Lil Pagoda's stomach, and not having the smallest piece of tincture come out, his heart bled blood. Wastrel. Such a wastrel. Unconsciously, Lil Pagoda had become Bao Yi's greatest enemy. Of course, he didn't dare to show the enmity that was in his heart. Lil Pagoda was deeply favored by Boss. If working under Zhuo Mo previously had been a decision made out of helplessness, then his heart was truly loyal now. He had never heard of a person so strong they could build a city like this by themselves, much less seen one. Right now, he seemed to understand why an expert like Xia Shan would willingly serve Boss. Look at the strong offensive abilities under Boss command. Oh, the god of wealth up high, he, Bao Yi, had never thought he could personally see such a strong and vicious troop. He didn't believe there was anyone that had the power to pose a risk to them in Little Mountain Jia unless Clear Sky Old Forefather personally came. He admired Boss very much for this point. Boss had opened up his provisions of tincture for his subordinates. The troop of 700 people used 3,500 third-grade tincture a day. If it was converted, it would be 7 pieces of 4th-grade tincture. 7 pieces of 4th-grade tincture daily. Whoa! He had almost fainted when he had first learned this. Even in Little Mountain Jia where tincture was not worth much at present, it still was not a low number. He felt a compelling pressure. The talismans that they had gained were not able to be sold. Now that the city was constructed, he needed to think of ways for Boss to start doing business. Otherwise, if they just fed off of their savings then in the long term, they couldn't sustain it in the future. Just as he was wandering in his thoughts, he saw Lil Pagoda waving in front of him. He hurriedly refocused and suddenly found that a line of puppets had formed behind the 3. Puppets. As an experienced merchant, Bao Yi had worked with all kinds of talismans, and naturally seen puppets before. Truthfully, from his angle, the construction of these copper puppets were very rough. Copper puppets were just one step above paper puppets, but still were very common mainstream items. He twisted his mouth. This kind of copper puppets couldn't sell for a good price, even if he was the one doing it. However, it was possible to see that the person who had designed these puppets had put in a great deal of thought. These puppets were designed for mining. The bottom half of their bodies were jointed in sections like a snake. That would allow them to adjust to all kinds of uneven terrain. The top half was shaped traditionally like a person, but there were 4 arms instead of 2. The puppets lined up neatly, each puppet carrying on its back a cloth bag that was larger than their bodies. Bao Yi lost some of his disdain. These puppets may look ugly, but they were very strong and were pretty good puppets. He watched as these puppets came in, and put down the cloth bags on their backs. Bao Yi quickly found a little mountain pile up in front of him. This. Pagoda Yi, what is all this? Bao Yi carefully asked. Lil Pagoda bent its chubby body and acted as it was talking. Bao Yi swallowed and wiped the sweat on his forehead. He asked uncertainly, is it to let me see? Every time he faced Lil Pagoda and the other 2, it was as though he was facing an enemy. He regretted not learning how to play charades when he was young. Lil Pagoda nodded. Bao Yi released a breath. He hadn't guessed incorrectly. He hurriedly ran over and opened the cloth bags. The blinding light of tincture reflected on his dumbstruck face and filled the room with light. Lil Pagoda ran in front of Silly Bird to ask for praise. Silly Bird used her wings to brush Lil Pagoda. Lil Pagoda instantly became happy, and hurried flying to the front to lead the way. This guy was very clever. They had become familiar after coming here a few times. With Lil Black on top, Silly Bird walked its proud stride and floated off as she brushed past the stunned Bao Yi. Xu Long was the highest-ranked supervisor of the guard camp. He was an old Xiu slave. Differing from the many people who had just been captured, he had already passed through 5 owners. This caused him to hold great authority among this group of Xiu slaves. He scanned the camp. Everyone was furiously cultivating. He couldn't help but give a satisfied expression. He was full of gratitude towards his present owner. Only Xiu slaves that had passed through many owners would deeply appreciate how much the present situation was like paradise. He had actually received favor from Master to command the guard camp. He was full of excitement and terror. He was happy that he could help Master, but terrified that he would ruin the matter. What he hadn't expected was that boss didn't get them to go work, but had them cultivate. Cultivation was very good. Even though he didn't know much, but he knew that cultivation was value. However, he couldn't help but worry. Master's action was benevolent, but in the eyes of other people, he was a wastrel. Who would let Xiu slaves cultivate? He had never heard of something so absurd. But since Master had ordered it, he could only do his best to help Master. Sometimes, he couldn't help but fantasize that some experts would be produced out of the guard camp and serve Master. It would be worth it even if he died. Master had kept them, and allowed them to cultivate. All of guard camp were holding their breath. What Xu Long was most afraid of were the new slaves. New Xiu slaves only had hatred in their minds. In their eyes, all Xiuzhe were enemies. He had also once walked that road. Xu Long, get them to come one by one. I need to inspect their progress. A thought came from the necklace on his neck. His mind became alert. Cultivating was so strange. This necklace of his should probably be a talisman. Yes, he hurriedly responded, and rang the large drum. In the sea of consciousness, Puyao interestedly played with the necklace. The little toys that Suemo forged had some usefulness. Making a troupe that cultivated Mo, how interesting would something like that be? Chapter 265, Silly Bird's Shocking Change. Silly Bird swallowed down a piece of grey mud. This was a ball of grey mud that Lilt Pagoda had just spat out. Lilt Black had no interest in the grey mud. Silly Bird was the only one that liked it. The 3 of them had a great relationship, especially as Silly Bird occupied the position of leader with a proud and matter-of-fact attitude. The other 2 little ones were very obedient towards Silly Bird. So whenever Lil Pagoda had the chance, it would skip to give the grey mud it spat out to Silly Bird. Zuemo had been very busy recently, where would he find the time to take care of them? If he knew how much of the grey mud Silly Bird had swallowed, his heart would definitely bleed. That was so much jingshe. Silly Bird didn't have any intentions of being frugal and swallowed the grey mud as though it was her right. The talismans that were collected were of much higher grade than before. Previously, the majority had been 2nd grade, but now it was 3rd grade. The storage were filled with a large amount of 3rd grade talismans. Since they couldn't find buyers for them, and the Xiuzhe couldn't use them, all of them had entered Lil Pagoda's stomach. Just by looking at Lil Pagoda's fattened figure, it was possible to see how good its recent days had been. Silly Bird had also received benefits along with Lil Pagoda. What was unexpected was that Silly Bird suddenly had a painful expression, all the feathers on its body were shaking. A faint whirlwind started to appear around its body, and spin continuously around her. Lil Pagoda and Lil Black instantly became nervous. Some grey energy threads suddenly appeared under Silly Bird's wings. As though they were alive, these grey threads of energy climbed and wormed their way up her wings. Her pain seemed to increase as her body shook more fiercely. The gray energy quickly spread over her body at a rate visible to the naked eye. In an extremely short period of time, the gray energy had spread along her long slender neck until it reached her eyes. Honk! A sound filled with pain caused Lil Pagoda and Lil Black to freeze on the spot in fright. Pew! An extremely small sound as though something had been lit. Silly Bird's entire body was wrapped in an extremely thick layer of gray mist. Looking at her from afar, she seemed like a roiling cloud of mist. Threads of gray energy spread out from the cloud, and entered the whirlwind that was swirling around her body, pulling out thin gray threads in circles. The gray thread circles increased in number until there appeared to be an invisible silkworm spinning silk. The dense layer of gray thread continued to dance around Silly Bird and gradually formed a gray silk cocoon. At the very center of the gray cocoon was a ball of mist that continued to spew gray smoke. Honk! The painful sound seemed to come from the bottom of the heart. Bao Yi, who had been disturbed, changed expression. Lil Pagoda and Lil Black were so scared they lost their minds. The gray cocoon suddenly flew into the air, leaving behind a gray shadow, as it disappeared into the horizon. Suo Mo, who had been working on the city's construction, suddenly changed his expression. Damn it! His legs pushed off as he flew into the air. I'll sort you all out when I get back. Suo Mo's furious voice passed back. Everyone at the ground looked at each other in ignorance. After a while, Xia Shan tried to ask Gongsun Cha, "Boss, should we send someone to follow?" Gongsun Cha glanced at the people that were yearning to go. Do you guys want to slack off? Don't even think about it. All of you, stay alert. Every one of you added together wouldn't be a match for that woman. The other people instantly faltered. They remembered that the female Xiao who always followed Boss was a terrifying existence. Suemo hurriedly followed in pursuit. Silly Bird that was wrapped in the gray energy flew extremely fast. He used all his power and could barely manage to keep up. He was both furious and panicked. Little brat, when GE catches up to you, just wait. Lil Pagoda was connected to him. In an instant, he had known what had happened. The more he thought, the angrier he got. Gu was working hard and was so tired, and you guys made trouble, you guys don't want to live. His mind prepared the series of tortures that would occur once he caught Silly Bird. It may have been due to the stimulus from his rage, his speed increased by another faction. The thunder-flowing light wings were pressed to their limits. He was like a bolt of lightning. No matter how fast he flew, the female Xiao managed to follow without any effort. But at this point, Suemo didn't have the attention to spare. His mind only had one thought: faster. Faster. Even faster. All of his mind was engrossed in operating the thunder-flowing light wings. After building the city, from the Fiend Hard Lightning, to the 36 Hard Lightning Formation Battle Watchtowers, without noticing it, his understanding of lightning had reached another level. Flowing light was a kind of lightning. Very quickly, he comprehended it and grasped the trick to it. The light of the thunder-flowing light wings exploded. The wings disappeared. They became a ball of lightning that wrapped around Suemo. His speed increased yet again. Boom! As the lightning flashed across the sky, it gave off a heart-shaking vibration. The sound was small but it passed into the distance. However, after chasing for several hours, Suemo still lost Silly Bird. No matter how much he accelerated, he could only watch as the gray shadow distanced itself from him and gradually disappeared. Do you know where she went? Suemo stopped abruptly and asked the female Xiao. The female Xiao stood to one side silently as though she hadn't heard anything. Which direction? Tell me. Suemo awkwardly added on hand motions, his voice extremely panicked. The female Xiao was like a statue and did not speak. Speak. Suemo suddenly raged. The female Xiao was not affected, and did not move. Looking at the female Xiao silently gazing at himself, the furious Suemo suddenly calmed down, the anger in his eyes disappearing bit by bit. "Sorry, I lost my temper just now." Suemo sincerely gave an apology. Even though he knew the other could not hear it, he had lost control of his temper. Calm, he needed to be calm. "Pu Yao, do you know which direction she went?" Suemo entered the sea of consciousness to ask Pu Yao. "Just now, it was to the east," Pu Yao said with helplessness. "My strength has been greatly used up, the range of my consciousness is much smaller than in the past." Towards the east. Suemo did not hesitate to keep on flying towards the east. "That damned silly bird. When Ge catches you, Ge will pluck you clean. How will you fly then?" Suemo thought hatefully. He continued to channel Ling power to maintain the thunder-flowing light wings as he flew across the sky. Fortunately, his body had strengthened greatly in the past while. Of his body, consciousness, and Ling power, the improvement of his Ling power was not as visible as his body, but the recent progress was not ordinary. His Ling power had reached 25 Jing, only 5 Jing away from the second stratum. What Suemo didn't know was how shocked the world would be if he spoke of such a crazy progression speed. In each stratum, preliminary growth would always be rapid, but the rate would become slow as they got closer to the peak of the stratum. 5 Jing of cultivation didn't seem like much. However, many people would expend 3 years, 5 years, or even longer on these 5 Jing. Suemo knew that while his cultivation growth rate had slowed, but the decrease was much smaller than normal Shouja. He didn't know if it was caused by the Mo physique or something else. At this time, he didn't have the attention to spare. He gathered his Ling power and flew with all his power towards the east. Flying without rise until sunset, there was still nothing to be found. He looked in all directions, there were no traces. Suemo's expression became dark, and couldn't control himself from swearing, "Damn it." However, his Ling power was now completely used up. He had no energy to keep flying and could only land. Taking out a few pieces of Jingshi, he made a primary replenishing formation before meditating to recover his Ling power. After reconstructing the Mo physique, the previous formations on his body had been destroyed. However, this Mo physique could automatically filter the impurities in the Ling power. Suemo patiently processed the Ling power he absorbed. Even though the Ling power that was absorbed did not have impurities, they were purer if he processed them and easier to control. After 2 hours, Suemo opened his eyes again, a light flashing in the dark. Just as he stood up, the Jingshi on the ground exploded into ball of dust. "This is troublesome," Suemo flew into the sky, and muttered with a grimace after looking around. The night was dark, and the coldness seeped into the bones. The cloud layer was very low, dark without any light. Suemo decided to fly up. After a moment, he struggled out of the cloud layer. The last bit of clouds were thrown behind him, the vast sky appearing in front. All of the stars were so bright, densely covering the entire sky. From the ground, the cloud layer looked endless. Under the starlight, it was like a black ocean. Between this cloud ocean and the stars, he was the only person. He had never seen such a beautiful scene before. He was entranced for a while. A moment later, he woke up. Looking at the female Xiao that was silently floating beside him, his mood became slightly better. He said to her with a smile, "Silly bird is somewhat dumb, but silly birds usually have silly luck, she shouldn't be in trouble this time." He knew that the female Xiao could not hear. Speaking this was just to comfort himself. Suddenly, a few dots of light appeared in the sky. Suemo was instantly alerted and turned his head around. It was a sword light. Suemo was not unfamiliar with sword lights. These were the lights that were usually created when sword shio flew on their flying swords. These sword lights came extremely quickly. Almost in the blink of an eye, they went from the size of a sesame seed to a mung bean. Zuemo could barely make out that there were 4 people coming, 3 male and 1 female, all of them sword shio. Zuemo's mind secretly became alert. These 4 people were not ordinary. Their speed as they flew on the sword was almost the same as when he would be using the thunder-flowing light wings with all his power. However, he didn't avoid them but moved forward. He wanted to ask the 4 people if they had seen Silly Bird. The 4 of them came very quickly. Zuemo vibrated his Ling power and shouted out, "Please wait." The 4 sword lights stopped at a place 50 zhang from Zuemo. All 4 of them looked warily at Zuemo. One of them opened, "Why has sire stopped us?" His tone was slightly unfriendly. Sorry. Zuemo raised his hands and smiled with friendliness. This one's steed was suddenly alarmed. This one has chased for a long time, but has lost it. Stopping everyone is just to ask if you have encountered a grey misty cloud. The expressions of the 4 eased. One of them said, "We did just see a grey shadow pass by, but it was too fast, we couldn't make it out." Zuemo's mind became alert. "Do you know which direction?" "That way," the person said as he pointed behind him. Zuemo hurriedly gave his thanks, rose and flew in the direction the person pointed at. "Xixiang, you are," the female shio asked with puzzlement. They hadn't seen any grey shadow along the way. He, the person laughed darkly. "We can't capture that benefit, but we can't let the person named Huang and the others to get it so easily. Otherwise, when we go back to Clear Sky Sect, our branch wouldn't even have any room. This person's cultivation doesn't seem to be high. I saw that he is only ning my first stratum," another person said confusedly. "Haha, we can silently follow behind. You will know when it is time," this person said confidently. "Maybe we can even take advantage of the chaos, and get some benefits. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.